Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everyone else watching, today we have a very action-packed episode of the Baekfast Club, a experimental VGC talk show slash podcast hosted by yours truly, and we are at the Nationals episode, which is going to be consistent of three national events that have happened, especially two of the biggest tournaments of the year and the biggest ones of the regulation I tournament so far, as well as leading up to the World Championship. These were the final events that we're concluding the season with, so it was going to be really stacked, especially because North America was able to break the highest record of entrance in a modern day tournament. So this is the biggest tournament of the modern era so far. And yes, it was quite a bit of action that was happening throughout. We'll be covering the North American International Championship. We'll be covering Japan Nationals in this episode. And we'll also be covering Singapore because they also had their national level event as well. We'll also be covering the 2026 season preview details that were released by the Play Pokemon team. And we have quite a bit, including the future events that'll be coming in the 2026 season, some new rule changes, tournament changes, and more. So should be an exciting episode. But of course, if you do enjoy the Baekfast Club, if you've been a bit of a regular recently, make sure to leave a like down below and leave a comment down below because it really does help out the series. As I said in the beginning, this is an experimental podcast that is going on till the end of the 2025 season, concluding with the World Championship episode. If I believe the podcast has potential to continue, then I will be running it because it really just depends on if it has enough good feedback. If it is popular enough, I will continue doing it for maybe the 2026 season and running a season there. But if not, then it will be scrapped. So let me know in the comments. Make sure you support it as much as you can if you do enjoy this kind of content, as we are going to be getting into the 2025 North America International Championship. So this is the largest event usually of the year besides EUIC. Of course, internationals are just on such a different scale compared to the regional level events. And at New Orleans in the middle of June, we had 1,129 masters. Again, this is the largest player base that has shown up in a recent regional championship, I think in at least the last 10 years. So very exciting. And if you notice, because we'll scroll through this top 8, there is not a single player from North America in this top 8. Now, I am not shocked that these players who did make top 8 though did make it, because this is a very stacked list of players. The amount of accomplishments these players have are absolutely insane. We have multiple international winners. We have multiple world trophies and top cuts in this top 8. It's absolutely incredible. So I'm not exactly surprised to see these list of players end up doing well. Was it kind of shocking that there wasn't a single North American player in top 8? I think there maybe would have been one or two I could have seen making it into the top 8, but at the end of the day, I am not surprised that there were a few players from Japan who were able to do well and a bunch of players from Europe that were extremely, just able to do extremely well at this event. So let's get started and break down the teams. At this point, I do want to mention that I am covering the big events. We are starting off with the North American International Championship, but there were also like several online tours. I don't think I can really cover all of them because at this point it's kind of repetitive and I don't really want to be too repetitive. I will save probably those online tournaments for another episode before the World's preview of like the events that have happened between like the end of the Nationals period towards the World Championship. But I think it'd be really repetitive. There wasn't like anything too groundbreaking, I think, in terms of meta usages at the online tournaments, so I will save those for another video. I just want to focus on the big picture, which was what were players going into these big national events having their mindset and seeing how like it developed into the story. So we have The winner, Federico, who was able to take his first international championship title this weekend. He was also able to win a regional championship earlier this year. And it's funny because he ended up playing Marco Silva at that regional championship finals as well earlier this year. And now he is able to win this one as well. He was able to win both times and claim the championship title. So very strong finals. It was a great performance. If you do want to go check it out, I highly recommend doing so because it was a good match and it was just solid because it was just good Pokemon with really good teams in general. Like both of these teams piloted by really strong players, solid tools, and it was a pretty interesting matchup across the board because it could have gone either way if the opponent got something wrong. So let's get started. We have the Lunala Miraidon team, and I think Lunala Miraidon, I think we already know about how well it's done. It was one of the first things players did experiment with in Regulation I when the format was announced, and it's not really too much of a surprise, right? You have the big ability of Shadow Shield Lunala, which is just incredible as a support Pokemon, as well as the offensive powerhouse that Miraidon is able to do. The first regional championship that happened in North America was able to win with pretty much a very similar concept to this team. But it did have Grimmsnarl over the Whimsicott. However, we did see Whimsicott also do well. I think it also finished top 4 or top 8 at that event, if I'm not mistaken. So Whimsicott and Grimmsnarl, we've seen these interchange before. Like, for instance, Federico was actually able to win a grand challenge with 5 of the same 6, although it was Grimmsnarl over the Whimsicott. And it just makes sense for what it has evolved into. I think Grimmsnarl usage kind of just has went down recently, because of the fact that there's more counterplay to the screens in general, and Thunderwave, there's ways to play around it for the most part, but also like it is a bit passive in general, as we saw from the original team. Like a lot of the offense that came from the team that ended up winning the first regional championship, piloted by Andrew Ding, had like a Solvest, Miraidon, had screens, Grimmsnarl. It was very passive and didn't really have the best offense. Like the best offense he had was Urshifu, Rapid Strike with Choice Band. But even then, like you don't lead the Urshifu in a lot of cases. You bring Urshifu mostly in the Terapagos matchup. So you were really relying on like Ursaluna to do heavy damage. Otherwise, Miraidon was more of doing chip damage. And then you have the support of Lunala. So this version that Federico has been using, as well as the current world champion Lucas Ceribelli, who ended up finishing in the top 16 as well with the exact same team, has been running this Choice Specs Miraidon because having that initial damage output, it just makes you have to respect the Miraidon a lot more here. And of course, you have way more offensive pressure with the Choice Specs Draco Meteor option, and of course those Electric Drifts and Volt Switch are doing a ton more damage across the board. Both of them running the Fast Incineroar. I think Fast Incineroar has just been very popular with the Miraidon, especially with the Assault Vest, because you have that special bulk with that Assault Vest. You have the Intimidate as well, and you're just able to pressure, for instance, a Rillaboom, because one of the ways you want to slow down Miraidon, change the terrain. And Rillaboom, of course, one of the best ones out there. But if you get pinned by a combination of Volt Switch, Flare Blitz, can be a little bit scary, as well as Incineroar having the faster Fake Out, of course. I think at this North American International Championship, as well as like just events towards the later parts of the season, the meta is developed already for the most part. Players know what is good or not, as well as like what they want to accomplish with these teams. So you see a lot of comfort. You don't really see too many outstanding surprises, and are just making some slight adjustments to teams that we've already seen. For instance, again, this team is not like a team we haven't seen before. Some EV spreads probably were adjusted. Terra Water on Whimsicott seems like a new one because they used to run quite a few different Terras like Dark or the Encore. But in general, just a few small changes here and there, and just strong playing. Like this team has just so many tools. Of course, you have the Wide Guard Electric Sea Lunala, super consistent, really hard to take care of, especially with the Terra Fairy and the Electric Seed boost with Shadow Shield. Like it's just really hard to get rid of Lunala. It's able to be very disruptive into a lot of teams, and we saw that Federico was really able to pilot this Lunala especially well, especially with the Wide Guard Mind Games, where he got like most of the time right, because he was able to Wide Guard on the turns where there was like an Astral Barrage, but in a lot of cases was able to go offensive with the Lunala as well, get some pretty important chip damage or get that Trick Room up, which was super valuable. So not too surprising that this team was able to perform well and win the event. And then we have Marco Silva, who ended up getting second, utilizing the Calyx Shadow Rider Zamazenta core. It's actually funny because I did mention that I didn't think Calyx Shadow Rider plus Zamazenta, it had potential to do well at NIC. Like, my pick, of course, for this event was going to be Koraidon Calyx Shadow Rider. Although a lot of them that did well, we'll talk about more in a bit, were mostly with Weezing. So I did say that I could see a Zamazenta Calyx Shadow Rider do well. And, you know, it was actually able to do extremely well. The conversion was actually pretty good. There were 2 in the top 8s that were pretty impressive. Or, sorry, 3 in the top 8. It was 3 in the top 8. So it was actually able to have a really strong performance here. Now, that was on my perspective of players from North America. And I'm not surprised that, like, players from Europe, where they're more, we saw, for instance, at the Italian special event, Bologna, that was just, there were literally like 2 Calyx Shadow Riders Zamazentas in the finals, and I think had a huge conversion rate there. So I'm not surprised that the players from Italy brought this, because it's just a really good duo. Like, no, North American players don't like bring Calyx Shadow Riders Zamazenta, but the strong players from Italy did end up using Calyx Shadow Rider and Zamazenta, and were able to pilot it to an extremely high level. And yes, we have Marco kind of using just like a good balanced team. Like, he's been known for doing this kind of combination before. He was able to do well with Calyx Shadow Rider and get top 16 at the 2024 World Championship with a similar concept, right? It was like Calyx Shadow Rider, Rillaboom, Incineroar, Ogerpon Heartflame, Raging Bolt, and I believe this was always Urshifu that he ended up using at Worlds to get top 16. And then it's just like, okay, I have a Zamazenta instead, because Urshifu, a lot harder to use if you're not using like Rain, for instance. So very much the same idea. Just try to outplay your opponent, because you have like really good tools with Fake Out, Intimidate, Partner Shot, U-Turn to pivot, Helping Hand to power up the Terra Dark Calyx Shadow Rider that makes it better against the Calyx Shadow Rider Mirror, but also is able to avoid Prankster Grimmsnarl Thunderwave, and that Life Orb Helping Hand with Astral Barrage. We've seen how crazy it was able to do damage, especially in like the Utrecht special event finals, where, or just the Utrecht special event in general, because Terra Dark Calyx Shadow Rider with Life Orb was really able to do well and just showcase how powerful it could be next to Helping Hand in Incineroar. So just a lot of good tools. Boost Energy, Raging Bolt, a Grassy Glide, Ogerpon. It helps out into the Kyogre matchup, but also like to get the priority. Grassy Glide just really good with Mold Breaker, because it ignores the Farigiraf Armor Tail and more, and Water Zamazenta. So not anything too crazy. It's just like, again, these 2 teams that were able to do well at this event and make finals were just teams that have really good general tools. And as long as you're able to outplay your opponent, you do have, in a lot of cases, the tools in order to be able to beat any kind of matchup, as long as you're playing well. So it's not like, oh, this is going to be a broken team that's like overpowering everything. You do have to think quite a bit, but in general, they do have the resources that they need. So was able to perform there. Then we have Kazuki Kobayashi, which, if you don't know, Kazuki is a player who got top 4 at the 2019 World Championship, which was with Yveltal and Groudon. And he flew all the way to the North America International Championship alongside a bunch of other Japanese players in order to try to get their invite, because Kazuki did not qualify for Japan Nationals or the World Championship prior to the North American International Championship. So in order to qualify for Worlds, he had to get top 4 at this event in order to get the auto invite to get into the World Championship. And he pulled the Cinderella story and was able to get to top 4. So really impressive. And he played extremely well. His team was very strong. And we actually have the full team here, which features the Choice Specs Miraidon, which was a timid fast one that's able to outspeed the modest variant. You had the Terra Water Cali Ice, really specially defensive, really bulky with that Leech Seed Calyx Ice Rider. The Assault Vest Terra Bug Incineroar, not too surprising. A really bulky Life Orb Landorus Incarnate running the Terra Poison, because you're still able to resist Body Press, powers up the Sludge Bomb, and resist those Dazzling Gleams for the Miraidon. Choice Scarf Urshifu with Terra Water. We have started seeing this adjustment on the team that Michael Kausch did bring to the Utrecht special event and did win, but that was with Ghost Choice Band. So Choice Scarf instead with Terra Water, and the reason you can afford to run like Terra Water is because you have Farigiraf of Armor Tail replacing the Grimmsnarl, because you can go more offensive this way. You have the Helping Hand support to power up the Urshifu attacks, and of course just being able to stop priority in general, so you don't have to go for Terra Ghost, so you can go for like more powerful Helping Hand Terra Water Surging Strikes combos with this duo. So the addition for Farigiraf, it's not like a groundbreaking addition. We've seen like Farigiraf Miraidon before, especially with Urshifu, but the team was just a little bit different and had good tools. The Farigiraf was just really able to help make a difference, that priority block, of course, and it was able to perform extremely well. We saw Kazuki on stream several times, and I felt like the Farigiraf was a pretty big tool in especially some of those matchups where it was definitely being very disruptive. So yep, all really good tools, very similar again to the team that was able to do well in Utrecht. Even the special bulky landers, or just the really bulky landers, but just opting for max special attack to do as much damage as you possibly can with those Earth Power, Sandsea Storm, and Sludge Bomb. As yeah, this landers is just gonna, it does a ton of damage. And this Kali Ice that is we've seen before with the Terra Water Leech Seed, so incredibly bulky. It's absolutely absurd. So not too surprising. Again, just really good teams. We kind of have seen all of these compositions before. Some small adjustments here, like we didn't see Farigiraf more commonly on this build. We usually saw the Grimmsnarl, Farigiraf making a little bit of a comeback, having had access to the Trick Room option, having access to just being able to be an immunity to Calyx Shadow Rider. Electric Sea is of course really nice, helps out against opposing like Calyx Ice Rider, especially with that foul play option. Yeah, not too surprising. Then we have Eric Rios, who ended up bringing a team that was, I'd say, quite a bit different. So a lot of the core is kind of similar to what we've been seeing in the rise of Miraidon Zamazenta has been a restricted duo that was just getting popular pre NAIC, and then with the Chien Pao added, it's not surprising. And then the Volcarona, which is just good against opposing Zamazenta, especially like the Calyx Shower Zamazenta. So it's quite an interesting team because you have a few different dynamics here that kind of separates it. One, you're not running like a Choice Specs Miraidon, you're actually running Choice Scarf. And we've been seeing Choice Scarf rise up quite a bit in usage recently. And the main reason is because of the fact that if you don't have a Tailwind Mon, or if you don't have a Mon that's immediately faster than Calyx Shadow Rider, Choice Scarf Miraidon is able to put on a lot of pressure against even those Tailwind teams. So it's hard to bring Torn, and yeah, also as well as being able to just immediately threaten the Shadow Rider is pretty nice. So you are able to just outspeed it, and it doesn't revenge KO, because normally in a lot of matches where like it's Choice Specs Miraidon versus Shadow Rider, the Shadow Rider you always have to respect because it can just do a lot of damage, especially if you play one turn wrong. +2 Shadow Rider will KO you with Nasty Plot, or with Astral Barrage boosted from the Nasty Plot. So Scarf Miraidon has picked up a lot of usage, especially we did see it do well in the previous couple of events. So it has done some work recently, and a lot of this team I think is about either doing damage with your Miraidon and your Zamazenta, or setting up for your Volcarona specifically, because this is an Electric Seed Volcarona. And Volcarona, of course, has just been a really strong mon into a lot of the common types. It's great into the Zamazentas, it's great into Shadow Rider with the Quiver Dance, and also if you do have enough support, it can be really good into Miraidon after Quiver Dance. And what this team has is it has access to Miraidon, one of the most powerful Pokemon in the format, but one of the things is the Miraidon mirror can be quite a bit annoying. So what are the tools that you have? For instance, Rillaboom here and Double Terrain. So Double Terrain is pretty interesting because of course it can be a double-edged sword. It can be effective where that grassy terrain recovery can be nice. Shutting down opposing Miraidon is pretty big, but also it can hurt you if you need the damage for your Miraidon and you're forced to bring Rillaboom. And we did actually see that on stream where Eric did have kind of a few times where that position was a little bit awkward. However, overall, the Volcarona is just really here where it's able to benefit from both of these. One, I guess the Electric Seed boost from the Miraidon, so as a lead it can be really strong. And then you have the Rillaboom as well, where you can just A, give it grassy terrain healing, which is pretty nice, but B, also power up its Giga Drain. With the Terra Grass option, being able to just resist the electric type attacks from the Miraidon, as well as just shut down the Hadron engines of opposing Miraidon, then get a Quiver Dance up and then heal back with all that Giga Drain recovery, it can actually be a pretty massive change. So not too surprising. It's just a really strong tool because this team does focus on Sam the Volcarona. You also have a Ogerpon with no mask. It is the teal mask Ogerpon with Cover Cloak, so you are able to hold an item on the base form Ogerpon, and it's not running Follow Me, which is just really interesting. It's instead running Ivy Cudgel as a grass type move. You have Taunt here to disrupt your opponent, and then you also have Encore. So we did see Eric use the Ogerpon, try to Encore the Calyx Shadow Rider because the speed boost you get from Terrestrialization with Ogerpon, you could use this to punish a Shadow Rider that is going for Astral Barrage. So you have multiple ways to kind of try to position against the Calyx Shadow Rider. Of course, you have that Cover Cloak that just prevents the fake out flinches or any speed drops. So you always can get that Encore into the Shadow Rider, which is a pretty big one. And Taunt for disruption. Again, a lot of it I think is just setting up for a Volcarona to really sweep teams. You have that Miraidon with the fast Snarl and the Volt Switch, which is able to be pretty disruptive that the opponent has to fear. And then, of course, you do have the strong pairing of the Zamazenta and the Xianpao. You have that Sword of Ruin that's able to do quite a bit to enable the Zamazenta for really strong body presses and have a more offensive mode, because this is a little bit, or just takes a bit of time to set up because you usually need multiple Quiver Dances. And it's not like you're doing so much damage with the Choice Scarf Miraidon. So you do have more offensive capabilities with the Zamazenta that's able to provide wide guard, a faster mode, and of course just being able to dish out immediate damage with really strong body presses that way. So yeah, that was Eric's team. A really interesting version and take on the Miraidon and Zamazenta core. We've seen quite a few different partners for it. Usually we see like Grimmsnarl screens, but instead going with more of a different approach to set up the Volcarona. Then we have Francesco, who has been absolutely destroying it. He was able to get top 8 at the Bologna special event, and he has now top cut every single international championship of this season. The only player to do it. It's absolutely absurd. He has been putting in so much work, and it has definitely been showing. I have had a chance to talk to Francesco in person, and yeah, it's just really inspiring to see him being able to perform so well consistently at a high level. And he's just been doing it with this like Terapagos team in this format that him and Pato was able to do pretty well at this event as well. A few changes from the original one. In Bologna, he did have the Iron Valiant over the Urshifu, and now he's gone back to Urshifu because I think he kind of realized Urshifu probably just a stronger fighting type in general. And also has that Rain Dance support in case you do fight a Koraidon, because Koraidon is still a bit scary for this team. It can be still a bit scary. But of course, you have the Electric Seed Terapagos, which is able to get defense boost, which makes it better into the fighting type moves in general. And to make up for the lack of grassy terrain recovery, as well as Amoonguss is kind of a bit weird to run on Miraidon teams because he can't really go for one of his best moves in Spore. You have that Sinistra, which is able to help out with the hospitality, because having that immediate healing for Terapagos can really just change the pace, as well as just the ability to constantly switch, utilizing the Volt Switch on Miraidon, get the hospitality, the fast U-turn from the Urshifu as well, can just help benefit and get multiple hospitality heals on that Terapagos. So really able to synergize well with this Electric Sea Terapagos that's able to set up with the Calm Minds. You have a bunch of pivoting moves with U-turn, Volt Switch, and Parting Shot. Fake Out support, Snarl support just enables again this Terapagos to get multiple Calm Minds up and do its thing to sweep. A bit of a different rendition from like the Calyx Shadow Rider ones with Relum Incineroar, where just a lot of teams kind of already know it's been a very popular pick. It's very similar to Terapagos teams that have done well with Screamtail in the past, where kind of something different, just something your opponent might not be able to have their matchup against, because Terapagos is a little bit more of a niche Pokemon in this format. So able to take advantage of this really interesting build and just play to its strengths. You have the finish up with Focus Sash, so it's just able to always live one hit, so you can get multiple hospitalities, and has no Trick Room. It's just Rage Powder for redirection support, always appreciate with Terapagos. Strength Sap to heal the Sinistra, but also to lower the attack power of your targets, so the Terapagos again could maybe be able to wall it, which is fantastic. And the Choice Band Iron Treads, which is able to help out against opposing Miraidon, especially the Specs Miraidon, because Specs Miraidon can still do a ton of damage to the team. So having that Iron Treads, we are actually able to see Francesco use Iron Treads several times on stream. And yeah, it's just a offensive mode you do have with this team. Again, like you have Choice Scarf, Urshifu, you have a Self-Vest, Miraidon. They aren't exactly like the strongest damage outputters immediately. Having the Choice Band Iron Treads kind of gives you a bit more of an offensive lead that you can go for immediate damage. And that was Francesco's Terapagos team, the only one that was able to make it into the top 8 at least. And then we have Yuma Kinugawa, who we will be talking more about this team in depth, but Calyx Shadow Rider with Zamazenta and Smeargle. Again, there's more to go around with this team, so I will break it down a bit more because there's also Japan Nationals, and Yuma did qualify for Japan Nationals, so we will also be talking about this team more in detail. But across the board, a good Calyx Shadow Rider Zamazenta core, a Raging Bolt Rillaboom, great supports, just running a bit different. No Incineroar this time, opting for Smeargle instead, having that access to Decorate, so you can go for Decorate into Calyx Shadow Rider. Decorate also goes to Protect, so you can go for Decorate into Calyx Shadow Rider, Protect. You have that Fake Out, you have the Spore, you have the Follow Me. You just have so many mind games at the combination of this lead with Calyx Shadow Rider, Smeargle. You might have to fear Fake Out Nasty Plot, you have to fear Protect, Decorate. There's just so much that this lead can really do in order to set up Shadow Rider. It's insane. And then running the Tornadus, this can help out against Rillaboom, it can help out against the Mirror, and that Sharp Beak Bleak Wind is just able to do a ton of damage. You can, the Torn was actually slower than the Smeargle. You can go for Decorate Bleak Wind immediately. Like, it's actually able to do quite a bit. And running that Sharp Beak, because it is really able to allow the Bleak Winds to get actual damage instead of just like Chip, where it would miss a knockout on Urshifu, for instance. With Sharp Beak, you're actually able to power up the Bleak Wind and allow it to do more damage into like Rillabooms, especially the Assault-Vest Rillabooms that are really bulky. This allows like maybe like Bleak Wind Astral Barrages to KO like a lot more Rillabooms than a Rillaboom that's just able to hang on, because Bleak Wind without that Sharp Beak would probably do under 50% to a lot of the Spadef Rillabooms that are just designed to take on Miraidon. So having that extra Sharpie can actually really change some things, as well as like calcs on like Urshifu, for instance. But we'll go more into details about this team because we actually have the full details, but I'll say that for the Japan Nats recap. Then we have Ruben, who is coming off a second place at the Bologna special event, and he did end up just using the same team he used at the Bologna special event, which he was able to do really well there. He has the Focus Sash Encore Calyx Shadow Rider, the Terra Wateron, the Zamazenta, the same Terra Electric Magnet Raging Bolt, double grass types with the Amoonguss and the Assault-Vest Rillaboom, and the Life Orb Xianpao with Taunt, which is able to be a bit more disruptive and shut down things like Grimmsnarl and more. So across the board, I mean, it's really impressive. He's got second place at Bologna into the top 8 at the North American International Championship. He's just having a really strong season. He's just already knew about how to pilot this team. He stuck with it very comfortably. I think he mentioned that like he felt the team was a bit outdated, but didn't have too much going into the event. So he ended up using the same team and was able to perform extremely well. And it's not too surprising. Comfort is kind of one of the gains for these like later big events, because you really want to know the ins and outs of the team you're piloting in order to, you know, have as much knowledge about matchups in general. These are where the big players are going to be showcasing their best teams, and you want to have, or you want to be able to at least pilot your team at a high level. So you got to use what you got to know, even if you don't think it is like the best call for the event. But he was able to get top 8, which was great. And then Gabriel Agati getting top 8 at the North American International Championship with Koraidon Calyx Shadow Rider, which is the one which I was gonna call that I think Koraidon Calyx Shadow Rider did have the potential. And then I see this build and I'm like, what the heck was he cooking? Because his build is definitely not one I would have expected. So it's not like the Wheezing version, which I've been saying I do think there's way more to this build than just running Wheezing and then Sun Spam with like Photosynthesis, Chi-Yu, Bees of Ruin. I mean, there's a lot more to this build than just that, but opting for this Calyx Shadow Rider, where if you are not looking at it, it is Leech Seed substitute Calyx Shadow Rider. And I saw him play his match on stream, and it honestly, I think the only moves he really clicked were Protect and Astral Barrage. Maybe he got a substitute up, but I do not think he ever clicked the Leech Seed. I'm kind of curious on how many times he clicked the Leech Seed, because I'm gonna be real, it didn't feel like it was clicking Leech Seed much. But I feel like Calyx Shadow, in most cases, a lot of the moves you're gonna be clicking, you're just gonna be clicking Astral Barrage most of the time. Let's be real. Let's be absolutely real. You're gonna be clicking Astral Barrage most of the time with the Calyx Shadow Rider, so it's not that big of a deal. However, I do understand a bit of the logic here if we do break down the team a bit more. So we had the Koraidon, of course, and the Screamtail with the boost of energy in case you don't have the Koraidon out on the field or Sun expires. And it does make sense because Encore disable Screamtail is just super disruptive. It forces a bunch of switches, and if that gives you an opportunity for Calyx Shadow to set up a free substitute, it's kind of like singles, right? It's just get a free substitute, then you spam Leech Seed, and then yeah, they can't really do much because they have to waste turns by switching out on the Encore disable as well as the Leech Seed. So getting a substitute of a Calyx Shadow Rider a lot easier. Then you just spam more Leech Seed, and yeah, it can be pretty annoying. Otherwise, you do have the more offensive version where you could just go for the Astral Barrage. And then you have like Flutter Mane as well, which is able to help out against opposing Calyx Shadow Rider because a lot of them do run the Dark Terra, or sometimes it's the normal Terra, but you do have, of course, Koraidon, and you do have access to Icy Wind in the Collision Course. You also do have the Shadow Ball Moonblast, and then you have Taunt to prevent like wide guards or disrupt anything like Farigiraf from getting Trick Room up and more. So it does make sense here. Good old Asulfus Incineroar just opting for the Terra Fairy instead of the Terra Bug as a defensive typing, which I mean kind of accomplished a bit more. It's just the same thing with like the Zamazenta being a bit weaker to Heavy Slam, but in most cases Fairy Terra can be a better Terra type, especially because it's just a really strong one, because steel moves aren't as common in the format other than the steel moves from Zamazenta and the rare Zacian. And then Wellspring Ogerpon, because this team can be a bit weak to rain in general, since they don't exactly have any tools, as you can see, that can hit a Kyogre for a lot of damage. You really are relying on Koraidon, and sometimes you do have to Terra, because Kyogre's most powerful partner is going to be the Zacian. So going to run the Wellspring Ogerpon as a guaranteed way to wall the Kyogre and have an immediate switch. That redirection can be really helpful. Rain boosted Ivy Cudgel will do a good amount of damage. Hornleech for the recovery, so it can stick around. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense that Wellspring Ogerpon, even though we don't really see it too much in the format, it's very, I think Wellspring is pretty, it feels really good in theory, but it just kind of falls short in a lot of cases. Like the only mon you really bring this for, I'd say, is like, or the mon it does really well in, is going to be that Kyogre matchup. And yeah, because otherwise you do have, for instance, the Sun on Koraidon that is reducing the damage output of this Wellspring, for instance, especially on this kind of team. So something to keep in mind. But the team composition does make sense. You do have the Koraidon able to set up with Flame Charge. You have the Screen Tail Encore disabled. That's just really annoying, especially to a lot of like the choice mons in the format. You have the Flutter Mane, great partner with the Koraidon with the Focus Sash. And of course, for Shadow Rider, it can help out against the Mirror in some cases. You do have this Calyx Shadow Rider that's able to substitutes with the help of like the Screamtail. You have the redirection and the fake out support as well. So it does make sense, and was able to get top 8 at this event at the North American International Championship. I should just call it NIC. I don't know why I'm calling it. I'm just saying the full thing, and I just want to say NIC, but my brain's not. If you don't know, I'm recording this in like really high heat, and I'm trying not to have the fan too loud so it doesn't pick up in the mic, because that's what I do when I record. That's what I do when I record. Otherwise, then the top 16 teams, I think we have, if I'm not mistaken, this was like Choice Scarf Miraidon. Yeah, Choice Scarf Miraidon with Life Orb Treads, and then Never Melt Ice, Leech Seed Calyx Ice Rider, Dark Urshifu. I think the mons I did call being able to do well at NIC that was a bit under the radar. I think Dark Urshifu, because the Wicked Blow is just able to punish a lot. The Wicked Blow in the close combat is just good against the Calyx Shadow Riders, because you have Wicked Blow to cover naturally, and then you have close combat for their terastallization. Usually it's going to be normal or dark, so Urshifu make a ton of sense. Bezod actually did play against Agadi in top 16, and the Dark Urshifu was just such a big threat to Agadi because like if the Urshifu was able to get the calls right, it was just going to be a disaster for Agadi because he had really no switches to Dark Urshifu. Then like a lot of it, as I said before, like a lot of these team compositions were to be expected. Like this is an event where the format has kind of already been kind of developed for quite a while, and players are just building the best teams or have the best cores already available and are just tweaking it in order to just adjust to their play style and like what they want in the team. So we have Justin Knox. We saw a team similar to this do well at the Bologna special event. These Calm Mind Lunalas with the double terrain, the choice card Miraidon to pressure the Calyx Shadow Rider and Tailwind teams. The Lunala with Calm Mind that's able to heal with the leftovers and the grassy terrain from the Rillaboom. Really helpful against opposing Miraidons as well. You have redirection, you have screens, you have support on the Incineroar. Not really too much to say, as it's just a really strong support. The Lunala team in general, really focusing on that Lunala that was able to get Justin into 10th place. Then we have Carson Confer, who also was able to get 11th place at this event, having a great season. And I believe Marcus Dion as well were both able to top cut with the same team that features quite a bit of an interesting take on Calyx Ice Rider Miraidon, because it's not like these mons are surprising. We've seen all of these be support on Miraidon team, especially Miraidon Calyx Ice Rider, but you don't really see all of them on the same team. So Miraidon Calyx Ice Rider Incineroar, that's a pretty common pairing. A little bit different. This one's ending up going with the Araki helmet Incineroar with the Bug Terra, and of course it's just able to be quite a bit. Parting Shot, of course, one of the best moves in the game. You can't run that if you're running U-turn, but running the Assault Vest Miraidon instead, and the Assault Vest Miraidon, it's bulkier, especially with the screens on the Grimmsnarl, a bit different from like the Choice Specs Miraidon and like the Whimsicott we commonly see. This one more lean towards the bulk. And then in order to make up for the lack of the immediate damage output, you have the Sneasler, which is able to, with the Unburden and the Electric Seed boost, outspeed the Miraidon, go for an Acid Spray into your opponent, and to go for a follow-up with the Miraidon. So you have that combination right there. And you have ways again to slow it down with the general bulk of the Grimmsnarl, with the Leech Seed Calyx Ice Rider, and of course the supportive Incineroar here. And then you have Ditto, which is able to transform into your opponent, which is able to copy their boosts especially. So a lot of the ways, if you're trying to get through a pretty bulky team in general, especially with screens, one of the best ways of course is going to be setup. And then you have the Ditto that can just copy, like for instance the Calyx Shadow Rider that's gone for Nasty Plot boost to deal with this kind of combination. So you can use the Ditto to really punish it that way. So that makes quite a bit of sense. It's definitely one of the weirder looking teams on paper. However, I think the composition does make sense of like how it play. You have the defensive mode with the Miraidon, Grimmsnarl, Cali Ice, Incineroar. You have the immediate offensive mode with the Sneasler and the Miraidon. And then you just have general good stuff. And of course, Ditto, that's just disruptive. It's just like a bunch of things that just make it so you have a pretty consistent, just being able to survive hits, take attacks, and then you have the Ditto that just disrupts your opponent from setting up or discourages setup or has to make them really finger out positioning, and then immediate offense. So not surprising it was able to do well. Then we have Luca again running the same team as Federico. We have Thomas taking a little bit of a difference from the team that Francesca was able to do well with, just running Wellspring Ogerpon to replace what was the Iron Valiant / the Water Urshifu. And then we have Victor Medina with the Calyx Shadow Rider Zamazenta, this time running the Smeargle as the last spawn over the Heartflame Ogerpon, and of course just having really great options that the Smeargle can do. Of course the Spore, that's just able to stall for turns. You have an extra Wide Guard mon for Calyx Shadow Rider, so you don't have to lead Zamazenta immediately, because one of the weaknesses of leading Zamazenta is you're less inclined to switch it out because you lose the defense boost, so you can lead like Smeargle instead. And of course this leads really oppressive with Calyx Shadow Rider Smeargle with Fake Out and Follow Me, Spore, and Wide Guard. All those mind games, like there is a lot of things that could just happen on turn 1 and especially turn 2 because of the Moody boost. So not too shocking there. Then we got Maddie running a kind of an interesting version of Calyx Shadow Rider Zamazenta. I know it was substitute Calyx Shadow Rider, which is a different take, opting for the fake tears Whimsicott with the Cover Cloak. And it just helps in the mirror because, of course, you do have Tailwind Whimsicott. So a lot of the Shadow Rider teams weren't opting for Tailwind at this time with the Zamazenta. So you actually have a way that can consistently get more speed control, which can be beneficial. Substitute, of course, allowing the Shadow Rider to be able to over attack can actually be pretty nice, especially against opposing Zamazenta plus Calyx Shadow Rider because of the wide guard mind games. Substitute can allow you to buy a hit on Shadow Rider, which can actually be super valuable. Then like Taunt Xianpao, which we've seen, the Terra Electric Booster Energy Raging Bolt, and then standard Ogerpon Heartflame, which is just able to redirect attacks. It is just a little bit different with the fake tears option that the Whimsicott does provide with the Tailwind support. Then we have Tommy Coolin, who is, man, he doesn't play too much, but he has done pretty well in the past. He's a former regional champion, and he is doing really well with Miraidon plus Calyx Ice Rider, with Dark Urshifu once again with Incineroar, with Safety Goggles, which is interesting because you don't really see Safety Goggles in Incineroar with the Miraidons. So that's actually a really interesting bring. So I guess you're just still able to ignore like the Amoonguss in general if they bring it. So that's actually really cool. Even if they change the rain, you don't have to worry about spores or anything. The Choice Scarf Landers with Crunch that we've been seeing pick up, especially after winning Korea Nationals. You have the Choice Scarf and the Crunch with Sheer Force Boost, which is able to threaten Calyx Shadow Riders. And yeah, then you have like Lazy Calyx Ice Rider, you have Pollen Puff Amoonguss. Interesting to see Amoonguss. We don't really see Amoonguss too much on Miraidon and Cali Ice. But of course, Cali Ice and Incineroar Amoonguss is generally just a good composition, really bulky in general. Has options to set up with Spores. Pollen Puffs is great for these two really bulky mons. So it does make sense. And then the Dark Urshifu here with just able to do a ton of damage with the Stellar Terra, survive one hit with the Focus Sash, and blow back teams with Close Combat or Wicked Blow. And then if we continue looking, we have stuff again like the Cali Ice Miraidon with Volcarona that was able to do well with Double Fighting and Farigiraf. Very similar to like what we saw in the early formats. Tim Edwards was able to do really well with the Calyx Shower Zamazenta balanced team for the most part. Justin Tang was able to top cut with the team that the world champion Shohei Kimura has been using with the Zamazenta Miraidon stuff. This is the team that's been picking up a lot recently with the Volcarona, Xianpao, Grimstone, Iron Hands. We mentioned the Miraidon Zamazenta before picking up. This team was the one that was really picking up before the North American International Championship happened. Then we have Giovanni Polar Bear, who has been having a really solid run just throughout the last couple events. Like I think he's top cut every single event he's gone to in Regulation I, which is extremely impressive. His winning in, for instance, day 2 of this event was against Wolf Glick, and yeah, they were playing a Koraidon Lunala Mirror, and he was able to win. And yeah, his sets were just, he's been using the same team for pretty much the entire format. It's Focus Sash, Fluttermane, Choice Scarf, Chiyu, the Life Orb Koraidon with the offense, of course, a really powerful Sun mode. Then you have the Tricker mode with the Brew Bonnet, the Lunala with the Power, Meteor Beam with Wide Guard Trick Room option, and a Terra Ghost Ursaluna that's just able to blow through teams. We've talked about this team several times here. I think the only change was Citrus Berry was actually common Brew Bonnet. I'm not really too familiar with the Brew Bonnet. I didn't even know like players were using Brew Bonnet. I think Wolf also used Citrus Berry Bonnet. I guess there are some calcs that it makes 2 a KO, 3 a KO, but I'm not too familiar with what Citrus Berry does on Brew Bonnet. But it is interesting to see that there were multiple players who opted for Citrus Berry Bonnet at this event. Then we have Nick Navarre, who was able to do well with a similar team that was like Gavin's team. It just has the Iron Jugulus over the Grimmsnarl. So you have like that Tailwind mode instead of the light screen and going like with a full defensive. Otherwise, pretty much everything is going to be the same there with the Life or Basket Legion, more of a fast offensive mode that you do have with the team instead of just relying on the screens there. So yeah, very powerful. And again, we talked about Marcus. overall with these teams, it's not like so many changes happened. A lot of these compositions that we'll see like in day 2, the compositions we see like the Kali Ice Kyogre with the Smeargle adjustment from Alex Gomez, a previous NAIC winner, was interesting. And then we see like maybe like there's a few mons that were not too common text, but Cresselia, for instance, was able to finish in 29th place. This was a electric seed variant that with Lunar Blessing to help pair with the Volcarona, allowing it for better setup. Thunderwave, of course, with Lunar Blessing can be allowing the Volcarona speed control, allow Quiver Dances to be set up easier, and of course heal the Volcarona. So a different take on like what we've seen the partners to be supporting the Volcarona on this kind of build. And then it's just like there's a few other things like Jumpluff was able to get 37th place, for instance. We were able to see Dragonite. This one was a Scale Shot Encore Tailwind set with Terra Poison with multi-scale, which was interesting with Calyx Shadow Rider and the Zamazenta, which was able to just do a good amount of damage with the Scale Shot, go for the Tailwind, and just help out the Shadow Rider from there. Then we see like full-on support with Calyx Shadow Rider, Zamazentas. And across the board, not like anything too crazy that we haven't seen already for the most part. Like a lot of these teams are probably familiar from previous events. There was like a new one with several players making day 2. Like I believe Ashton Cox and Matt Bruno were pretty much, I know that they were working on this composition for like months. Like they were telling me about this composition for months with Choice Specs Terapagos, with the Shadow Rider Calyx, with Smeargle and Whimsicott. Like they were telling me a bunch about this. And yeah, like Choice Specs Terapagos, again, very powerful. Same idea with the Decorate Smeargle. And you're just able to really just sweep teams under the tailwind. It's a very, very big offensive team that doesn't really have much room for error. It can just really sweep unpositioned or unprepared teams. And I think several players actually ended up making day 2 at this event with it. Like I'm pretty sure there were like 4 or 5 of these in day 2 at least. And across the board, it's not, again, more niche mons. Like there isn't like too much. Again, there weren't like too many experimentations. A lot of it was like players just having good mons that they knew that they how to pilot them and just make them able to fit more of their comfort / play style. Because it's not like we saw any crazy mons. I mean, there was Okidogi piloted by Fiona who finished 76 with, I mean, it's a team that just has a few small changes. Like we see Specs Miraidon plus Clear Amulet Kali Ice. We've seen like Clear Amulet Kali Ice kind of drop off recently. A lot of the Elite Seed ones have still been popular, but I mean, there are still players who do run the high horsepower, and it's still like a good option. Don't get me wrong. It's still Kali Ice at the end of the day. High horsepower is still really good coverage. Plays around the wide guard too. Running Wellspring Ogerpon as well with Covert Cloak Incineroar, which is able to help out against opposing Incineroar, because if you do fight the Incineroar mirror, you don't have to worry about like them faking out your Incineroar. They're the faster Incineroar. And Okidogi is just able to punish quite a bit because it's really good into like generally that it's not Fire Water Grass Core anymore. It was really good into the Incineroar Rillaboom compositions though, because Okidogi of course does have some good moves. Snarl that's able to be disruptive, Gunk Shot that's able to punish any grass types and Terra Grasses, and the Drain Punch, which is able to recover, and Low Kick for the more powerful attack. It can be a really powerful partner, especially next to Miraidon, because one of the best ways to threaten opposing Incineroars and the Rillaboom, so you don't have to as worry much about those Pokemon with Miraidon, because if they do lead it, Okidogi's looking pretty good. And then you have like Choice Scarf Landers to help out against like the Miraidon Mirror and a few others. So it does make sense in the composition. And then a lot of this, again, not really too much anything crazy. I think we've gone through most of what I would say. I mean, there's Alcremie on Hard Trick Room that finished in 93rd place. There was an Iron Moth. There was Giratina Origin Form plus Kyogre that was piloted by Henry Rich. We'll actually be featuring this on this channel pretty soon, so be sure to take a look on that video. This featured the mixed Giratina with Draco Meteor, Poltergeist Shadow Sneak, Tailwind Whimsicott, Rage Powder, Struggle Bug Volcarona, Paragrass Mystic Water Kyogre, Sash Pow, and the Sulfest Rillaboom. So it was just an interesting build, and yeah, I mean, there's not really too much to say about it other than it's it's interesting. I would say it was like the best build. I've tried it. Guaranteed Origin form is definitely a Pokemon that makes work because you have multiple moves between these two that you gotta connect. Like both of these don't have the most consistent moves. I'm just gonna say that much. And then yeah, I wouldn't really say anything again super crazy. Paul Reed's actually making day 2 with 119 place with Patrice Chestnut. This is a team I actually do want to rebuild. And yeah, it's a cool one because it has a Calyx Shatter plus a Koraidon pair, but has the redirection Pachirisu because of course it's funny because it's just like a Mon that can help out against Miraidon. Of course, you have the Volt Absorb making the Miraidon Electric type useless, as well as the Fairy Terra, so you can resist or be immune to the Draco Meteors. So only you have to worry about the Dowsingleans for the most part. And then you have stuff like the Fire Terra Koraidon and then the Wide Guard on the Chestnut that's able to put in some work against those. But yeah, it's just a very interesting build because Nasty Plots, Draining Kiss, Calyx Shadow Rider. We've seen this a lot in Regulation G, but we haven't seen it too much in Regulation I. So just a really interesting build. It's a lot of support of the Shadow Rider Calyx, but you also have the offensive mode with the Xian Pao and the Koraidon, and then you got really unique supports in Chestnut and the Pachirisu. But yeah, other than Paul, I would say like we see some rain with Zacian Kyogre. Like if I go through some of the stats, which I will in a minute, like there was a Gothitelle Talonflame team that was able to do well. Of course, Shadow Attack, of course, just great ability. Talonflame with the Sharp Beak has access to the Brave Bird immediately, has Feint to play around the Wide Guards. You have the Emperor Taxi, you have the Quick Guard to prevent Sucker Punch and other priority moves. So it's an interesting build here. But yeah, across the board. I mean, there was a Reshiram that ended up making day 2, which is actually uh, which was actually pretty strong with Reshiram being able to just do a lot of damage with a Life Orb attack and having that fire damage immediately because this Incineroar is just going to be your supportive knockoff set, and then you have the Scarf Annihilate that's able to take a trade, and yeah, otherwise not too much. Like Reshiram's able to help out the Calyx Ice Rider by having good special defense to be able to tank on like the Calyx Shadow Rider decently while threatening a really powerful attack. You have these Zamazentas you can put on a lot of pressure against with Blue Flare and Draco Meteor. And against Miraidon, again, because of the fact that it has really good special defense, it's able to take on the special attacks quite decently from these powerful restricted Mons. So definitely a Mon I probably do want to try out a bit, but Blue Flare is inaccurate. Draco Meteor is inaccurate. I will just warn you. And Heat Wave, if you want to run it, is inaccurate. So yeah, I'll talk a little bit. I think we've pretty much have gone over like all the teams of the format. I'll just talk a little bit about the usage stats since I do have the usage stats for this event, or I guess like what restricted. I don't know the duels, but we do have the day 2 teams, like what converted well. So in day 2, the most popular restricted Pokemon was going to be Miraidon. 68 Miraidons out of 162 players who made it in day 2. 67 Calyx Shadow Riders. So Miraidon, Calyx Shadow being the top 2 restricted Pokemon shouldn't be too much of a surprise. Calyx Ice Rider at 3rd with 51 of them. 51 Zamazentas as well, actually tying for 3rd place. Koraidon going to be the 4th most used, or I guess 5th most used restricted at 27. There were 20 Kyogres. 14 Terapagoses, which I'm actually kind of surprised because that's way more Terapagoses than I thought. And then Lunala at 13. Although a lot of the Lunalas, I think Lunala probably had one of the best conversion rates out of like day 2 into top cut. Like performance wise, I think Lunala did the best. Then there were like 6 Zacians, 5 Groudons, more Groudons than I thought. Then it just drops off immensely because then it's just Giratina, Reshiram, and only one player used each of those restricted. So most common supports: Incineroar, Xianpao, Amoonguss, Raging Bolt, Urshifu Rapid Strike, Rillaboom, Whimsicott, Iron Hands. I mean, it's just all that you would really expect to see here from this event, and that's from day 2 usage stats strictly. If we converted it into the top 32, Miraidon was the best restricted by far with 13 of them. Not too surprising. I think Miraidon is just really strong because you pretty much have a Mon either Assault Vest, just tank attacks, or Scarf that can outspeed, or it is just able to do so much with the specs. And then Zamazenta was actually the restricted that got the second most top cuts, or was the second most used restricted in the top cut with 8 of them. Then third is a tie between both Calyx forms. Fourth is Lunala. There were 4 Lunalas in the top cut, and considering there were 13 of them, that's still pretty good conversion. That means like 20, what is it, 33? Like a little bit, like 30% of the Lunala players did end up making top cut, which is pretty cool. And like 2 Koraidons and 2 Terapagos each, and then 1 Kyre was able to make it. So yeah, for the most part, that was North America International Championship. Not too surprising. Again, I don't think there were going to be too many surprises, maybe like a few here and there. I don't think there was going to be any like outstanding builds. There's just going to be players with the best teams that they could pilot and just playing well. Like that was going to be the events. That's usually how it goes too at these really big national events. It's either going to be something really creative out of the water, or it's going to be usually the best players just using a team we've already seen before and just making some slight adjustments. And usually it's the form or the latter. Now let's move on to the Japan National Championship. If you don't know, the Japan National Championship, they have to go through the circuit of the global challenges, placing the top 50 of each global challenge. I think there's 3 of them. Then it's 150 total players. And then afterward, they move on towards an online ladder tour, which is like, I think, max 10 or 15 games, if I'm not mistaken. And then the top 64 of that ladder tour specifically gets invited to Japan Nationals. So there were 64 qualified players for Japan Nationals. And yeah, let's get into it. If you don't know, Japan Nationals is a best of 1 closed team sheet setting. And they've been doing double elimination recently. So kind of interesting. They just focus on double elimination. It's not Swiss, it's just double elimination. It's best of 1 before top 8, then it's best of 3 from top 8 onwards, and before top 8 it's best of 1 closed team sheet, and then it becomes open team sheet best of 3 after top 8. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting one. And remember when I said about we would talk about this team from Yuma Kinagawa? Yeah, we're going to be talking about it this time. So we had the team that Yuma Kinagawa was able to win a top 8 in North America into a win in Japan Nationals is such an insane accomplishment. Like that back-to-back weekend, it's insane, especially when you think about it. Like just the fact that Japan Nationals is a closed team sheet, and this team was revealed on stream at the North American International Championship. There is no way that the players from Japan did not know about this team. So a severe disadvantage. However, Yuma was able to pilot the odds and was just able to win the event, which I think is an incredible accomplishment. So this is a team that Yuma brought. It features the Calyx Shadow as Almacenta, and it's really interesting because every Shadow Rider you'll pretty much see in this format is always going to be max speed in most cases. However, Yuma decided, hey, I'm not going to run max speed and run 140 speed. This allows you to outspeed base 135s, and that is it. Instead, opting to have bulk and a good amount of special attack investment, so you still do a good amount of damage initially. And the idea behind this is because you do have Wide Guard's Almacenta for the mirror, but you also have a Tornadus that is able to help out. And the idea is you have multiple ways to help out against opposing Shadow Rider, whether it's the Terra Dark against like the Focus Sash ones, you have the Wide Guard support from the Almacenta, or you have the Tailwind from Tornadus, or you just put the Calyx Shadow Rider to sleep utilizing the Spore on the Smeargle, as well as like priority mons like Raging Bolt and Rillaboom to clean it up. So you do have all those options against opposing Calyx Shadow Rider. So deciding to not opt for max speed and utilize those EVs in order to take advantage of the bulk, so Shadow Rider can survive hits, because it is your main sweeper. Like Decorate Smeargle is definitely an interesting one on Calyx Shadow Rider's Almacenta specifically, and it's mainly for Shadow Rider. You go for Decorate into Shadow Rider, and then you have Mining Ace, right? I mentioned before, you can go for Decorate to protect. You have the Fake Out immediately plus Nasty Plot. You have Fake Out Astral Barrage immediately. You have a Spore protect. You have Decorate protect. You have Follow Me, Nasty Plot, Astral Barrage, Psychic, etc. There are so many options that the Smeargle Shadow Rider can do. And I think this makes it super impressive because Yuma had so many options and the mind game of control at or at least from this lead alone, that it can just really be disruptive. Then we saw stuff like Tornadus Smeargle that was able to lead set up the Tailwind, and then you could go into your Shadow Rider and just go for like sweeps with like Decorate, Astral Barrage, and more. And yeah, there was just quite a bit. Otherwise, you could go for Decorate with this team on pretty much anything. Decorate won't affect the body press from Zamazenta doing more damage, although it will boost up the Heavy Slam, I suppose. But in most cases, I think it'd be clicking body press anyway. You can go for Decorating a Raging Bolt, which we did see, which is able to just boost up the Raging Bolt. That Terra Electric Thunderclap will extremely hurt, especially in like a Miraidon matchup. And able to put on pressure there. You can even go for Decorate into your Tornaz. The Tornaz is actually designed very slow, still bulky, modest, able to do a lot into, for instance, Volcarona, which the restricted duo does struggle into a bit. However, it's just able to put on a lot of pressure against Urshifu, against Rillaboom, mons that like Calyx Shower doesn't like in general. So having that Sharpie just to power up the amount of damage that you can do. And then you go for Decorate with Smeargle. That Sharpie Bleak Wind is really hurting, and I mean really hurting. You can go for Decorate immediately plus Bleak Wind turn 1, and it would do a ton of damage that your opponent might not expect. And then you could go for Decorate with Rillaboom with Woodhammer, Grassy Glide. It will still do a ton of damage across the board. So really impressive stuff. I think it's just, again, can't be stated enough how impressive the win is. It really cannot be, because revealing your info on the team on stream at NAIC. Although the thing is about Smeargle is it is a mon that like can run any move. So I bet there were going to be players as well who thought about like the Smeargle and like were there changes to the Smeargle. There were probably players who knew like what this 6 had at NAIC, but also like probably tried to consider if the Smeargle could have been changed as well. Like if it added Wide Guard instead, or like some other tech moves, because that is how flexible Smeargle is. Smeargle is just that mon that can really just do anything. So with Smeargle, you can never be truly prepared, because a Moody that changes, because Moody will just can affect the battle. We saw Speed Boost, for instance, perform well. Like a Speed Boost on Smeargle just changes the board. Some good defense boost will change the flow of the battle. And yeah, there is a lot. But of course, being able to pilot with all those different factors, I think is just incredible. So that was Yuma's team. Get the Decorate Smeargle, set up with the Spores or the Decorates, and then try to sweep with Shadow Rider or Zamazenta. But mainly it's going to be the Shadow Rider. Shadow is going to be the main component of taking the damage. Otherwise, I'm guessing in some matches where you can't really do that because of Wide Guard, then we see like the Raging Bolt take over instead. Then we have Shohei Kimura, who was able to get second place using what Federico used to win the North American International Championship. It is the same one. Normally it's funny because when we see this, normally it's the opposite, because Japan Nationals is usually before the North American International Championship. I can't remember the last time. I think it might have been like it was like before 2018. I think it had to be before 2018, when a Japan Nats was after NAIC. But across the board, the fact that Shohei was able to pick up this team and pilot to second place, it just really showcases the skill, and the fact that this team was just able to be really impressive. It was able to just be consistent across the board, even in this close team sheet environment. Of course, like you do have the 6, your opponents are probably still thinking like close team sheet can complicate a lot of situations, especially in a player's head. There are so many possibilities that you just have to consider as a player, where they might think, oh, they know the team, but is it the same team or is it something different? And that's just always something you have to consider. There was one change that Shohei did make compared to the original, where it wasn't Ghost Urshifu, it is Water Urshifu. And I think that makes sense, because if you do know the 6, you do tend to know it's going to be Ghost Urshifu, so you don't usually go for the fake out in most cases. So it does make sense in the close team sheet error to go for a Water Terra instead, just for like a surprising Surging Strikes knockout that they were not anticipating. But across the board, it's pretty much the same, other than like Fire Whimsicott. I don't know of like the Calm Nature, because we don't know what Federico's is, and then Anime Incineroar over Jolly Incineroar. But otherwise, it is pretty much the same build. I haven't actually seen the finals yet, so I do want to watch it, but I heard it was really good. But yeah, then we have third place opting for a crazy team, which was, this is like what I expected. And you know, it's funny, Kyogre getting third place at Japan Nats in the restricted format. It's its history repeats itself, because the last time was the Covert Cloak Kyogre with Blizzard, Terra Ice with Torn, Snowscape was getting third place. Now it's Choice Scarf Kyogre with Water Spout, able to do a lot with Sulfus Cali Ice with Smeargle. But I actually think this build just makes a lot of sense. It doesn't complicate much of game plans. You just have a Sulfus Calyx Ice Rider, which I did mention in the preview for Japan ads. I think it was just Calyx Ice Rider has so much potential, where in a close team sheet setting, like it has so many demon sets. Clear Amulet, the leftovers, these can be annoying, but a Solves, this thing was super popular at the previous Japan Nationals and Regulation G, and this thing is just so strong. It doesn't go down to really any one hit. Like the only one, maybe like a fire move from Koraidon, and then you have Kyogre Rain to cover for, so it's not like even that bad. Then you have like Decorate, Smeargle, as well as Fake Out and Spore. So you have so many options to support this Calyx Ice Rider. And the idea of the team, because we have showcased this team on the channel, the offer did also make a team report, is you lead Smeargle Calyx Ice Rider, you do the things with Smeargle, Disrupt, or set up the Decorate with Cali Ice, and then afterward you go for a very powerful endgame cleanup utilizing your Kyogre, and then one of like Mousehold Volcarona usually. Farigiraf is kind of like a mind game mon because they had to respect it in team preview. It also like Farigiraf Smeargle was like a very common lead on these hard tricking teams. So yeah, this is a build I do respect because I think it just has so much potential and like the offensive capabilities, because this mode is just super consistent in it won't go down and you can get a lot of damage off, and then you clean up with Scarf Kyogre, it can just do so much. So it was able to get third place, and one of the more interesting builds I think for Japan Nationals that really does take advantage of the close team sheet, but still was able to perform well. The fact that it was able to get third place is impressive. And then fourth place is Zacian Calyx Shadow Rider, and it's funny because this is the duo that won the 2022 World Championship. We don't really see it much often, and that's mainly because Zacian has just been nerfed to the ground realistically. But I think the duo has had more potential than is shown, and I think this is like its first really big major performance. It's top cut like maybe like a few online tours, but this is like the first, I think, IRL event that it actually has done extremely well in. So running the Encore Disabled Shadow Rider, which is just very disruptive. We've seen support Shadow Rider with Focus Ash do well. It was able to win the World Championship in 2022, and it just makes sense because with all the choice mons out there, with all the support moves out there, the things that you could do with Encore Disable, and then just allow Zacian to go for some really strong damage. I've used a team very similar to this in the Reg G Global Challenge. The combination of Zacian with Torn Lando, with Urshifu and Incineroar, it's absurd. It's absurd because you have like a bulky Incineroar for Assault Vest that's just able to take attacks and pivot around. You have the Tailwind mode with the Torn. This one running the Mental Herb Torn, so you don't have to play against like fast Taunt or Encores and have to worry about it. And then you can afford to run like Terra Normal, so you're immune to the Astral Barrages from opposing Shadow Rider. Then you have stuff like the Urshifu with Rapid Strike that's able to do a ton of damage utilizing the Terra Water Surging Strikes with the Rain, Taunt, since you do have a fighting move on the Zacian with Sacred Sword, and the really powerful Landis Incarnate, which is not running the Sanseer Storm. It's actually running the Substitute, which is an interesting one. But across the board, I mean, it's just such solid mons in general. You have like Zacian, one of the better mons to deal with the Miraidons, able to punish the Fairy Terra. Sacred Sword is able to hit the Zamazentas. You have Landis Incarnate for the Terra Electric Miraidons out there. And it's just like a good, just general offensive team. Like this team could definitely work in both environments. It's really good, I think, in both an OTS and a close team sheet environment. Like it just has solid tools. You have Fake Out support, you have multiple lead options, Fake Out Substitute, Fake Out Tailwind, Fake Out just attacks in general, U-turn pivots with Tailwind, good offensive capabilities across the board, pretty good speed in general, and the bulk, I'd imagine like there's some bulk with Urshifu and Incineroar, and you have Taunt to help with the trigger mode. I'm not sure if the Landis would be bulkier now on this team, but yeah, there's just so much that I think this team can offer, and I really do like this build a lot, and was able to get top 4 at Japan Nats. And we have 5th place. This seems crazy. This seems crazy because it's like I had to do a double take because there was a Jolly Calyx Shadow Rider. It's Jolly Calyx Shadow Rider with Terra Fire, Terra Blast with Weakness Policy. I have no idea what Calyx happened because Calyx Shadow Rider is not like Calyx Shadow has a base 85 attack. I don't think there's any way you get the physical Terra Blast off if it changes. I'm like pretty sure like snarls or something. Like I just don't know. I just don't know why it's Jolly. I have no idea why it's Jolly. That is like one of the biggest mysteries is why is this Calyx Shadow Jolly? Maybe it was the only shadow they had. Maybe they minted it wrong. Maybe it was something. I have no clue. But I do not know. But this is a very big of just utilizing again stuff like knowledge of Choice Scarf, Bruxics with Dazzling. I think there was like kind of like a soft team report about like how the team functioned where it was more about like just trying to get some of the mind games right because of the Bruxics combo. And then you have like stuff like Trick Room Entity and the Thunderwave Grimmsnarl. Across the board, a lot of this is by setting up the Shadow Rider Calyx and then going for the Bruxics lead. You outspeed your Shadow Rider, you go for Serve, get that weakness policy because you Terra Fire, and then you do a ton of damage, or you go for Flip Turn. I suppose that also can work as well. You can like Flip Turn with Shadow Rider and then bring an Entity and then go for Expanding Force and then just delete a Pokemon that they were not expecting. So that does make sense for the most part. It's a supported Bruxics, and of course, if you don't know what Dazzling does, it's basically like Queenly Majesty and Armor Tail prevents priority from getting prevents opponents from using priority against your side of the field. So that is Bruxics, and then it has like the Grimmsnarl. You have the Fake Tears and Thunderwave support for the Specs Ogre to dominate. You have the Entity Psychic Terrain, and then you have like Sash Food that's just able to play through Protect. Like it's pretty strong with just the offensive capabilities, but it is a team that if you get one thing wrong, it really does backfire because it's not like the mods are really bulky on this team. It's really about the offense. You're really committing to the offense on this team. Then we have Groudon Miraidon, and we saw like a few Groudon Miraidons do well. I think I didn't talk about North America International Championship. There was like, I think there were a few Groudons, and I know like there was at least one that was I think the highest one was like 9-3 and it had Rising Voltage, Raging Bolt with Miraidon, Groudon, and that just does a ton of damage. I don't know where it is. Ah, here it is. Yeah, this one. 54th place. It had Rising Voltage, Raging Bolt with Leftovers, Groudon, and the Salvest Miraidon. I actually didn't really talk about this team because I knew like some of the attacks, but I didn't actually know all the attacks. There were some insane ones with like Grass Knot, Whimsicott, with Covercloak's Terra Steel, Ice Beam, Iron Bundle, not Freeze Dry, which, man, you're so used to running Freeze Dry, but it kind of makes sense because you have like multiple electric mons to hit the water type, so Ice Beam more powerful. It actually does change calcs because Freeze Dry is a generally weak move. Roar for Regraph, and then Leftovers, Helping Hand, Groudon just to power up. Like a lot of the damage output is mainly for the Raging Bolt here. But we have seen a few different builds of Miraidon plus the Calyx, or Miraidon plus the Groudon, and the fact that Groudon is just a weird spot. Like a few players did opt to bring Groudon, and of course it is a mon that is theoretically good into or into opposing Miraidon because of its ground typing, and you can have a good amount of special defense investment even though it's not the best pair. With screens you'll be able to leverage Choice Specs Draco Meteor. However, this team has kind of been popping up, and it kind of makes sense. I mean, you do have quite a bit of support. You do have the screens Grimmsnarl with Fake Out. You do have it next to the Electric Seed Volcarona, and then with the Sun you're able to reduce the damage of the water type moves as well as just power up the Volcarona's Fiery Dance initially. So it is more of a team that can just support the Volcarona. You have that Willis support on the Groudon, which helps out against really strong physical attackers like the Calyx Ice Rider and the Zamazenta, and it just makes Volcarona like really able to absorb those attacks. And then Willis, of course, with screens, Intimidate, and the Salvest Miraidon can be a really hard pair to stop. And then you have Xianpao if you need that offensive damage, if you need to pressure the dragon types more. And yeah, and then you have Roaring Centaur that can just be able to be disruptive, especially into any of the setup Pokemon. So a really interesting take. I would say this is not really as much as a CTS focused team, but this is a team that does have a solid composition. And I think we have seen this kind of, or at least similar builds go up before the events. This has been a team that's been utilized before. I've at least seen a few of these, I believe. And we have Terrapago stuff. that was able to make it into the top 8 that featured a 3 attacks Terapagos not running Calm Mind with Fake Tears Grimsnall. This is a more offensive mode, but it does really look like a balanced team when you think about it. Like, you sometimes you would probably think maybe it's Calm Mind, but you have the Covert Cloak Grim, which can just catch players off guard because they fake out the Grim to stop the screen from going up, but then they're able to go for no screens. But this one is Fake Tears, Thunder Wave, and their own fake out. Support the Terapagos set up with the Meteor Beam and then dish out a bunch of damage with Fake Tears or Thunder Wave plus Terra Starstorm. Encore, Calyx Shadow, pretty standard. You do have the support of Volcarona and Amoonguss for your Terapagos and Shadow Rider, and then Iron Hands with Brick Break for opposing screens. It's not running electric move, which is really funny. But across the board, a lot of this is just set Terapagos, and it does look like a balanced team when you look at it, but it definitely is more of a support to Terapagos, but in a more offensive way instead. More offensive instead of a Calm Mind, slow defensive style kind of gameplay. So that's an interesting take to see. And finally, the last our last team that was able to make top 8, the one we actually have information on, it is a Kali Ice Kyogre team once again. And this one is just Trick Room, Imprison Calyx Ice Rider. So you're able to stop opposing Calyx Ice Rider from going for Glacial Lance, which I actually kind of like, because if you go for Terra Grass, Kali Ice, the one thing is if you do have to Terra your Kali Ice, the fact that you're vulnerable to opposing Glacial Lance in the Kali Ice mirror is just really awkward. So having that option to go for the Imprison to stop from Trick Room Reset as well as Glacial Lance is actually pretty cool. Then you got stuff like the Eject Pack Smeargle, which means that the Smeargle is able to support by sticking Fake Out. You get the free switch, you go into Kyogre, just draw off the Water Spout. Trick Room Fluttermane that is able to go for Trick Room itself and catch opponents off guard, as well as just be a fast mon because it's a Intimidator and still dish out a bunch of damage. Rapid Strike Urshifu that's able to be powered up in the rain, do a ton of damage. And then the Landorus Incarnate that is still like a good mon in general, is able to hit pretty hard with its ground type attacks and the Sludge Bomb because of the Life Orb Share Force boost. It's definitely a bit one that will catch you off guard. There's good mons in general, but there is like the Power Lens Kyogre, which allows it to out under speed like base 50s under that Trick Room and get the more powerful Water Spout off. You have stuff like the Smeargle that's just able to go for a just a fake out mon in general and then just try to get out of there so you can get your free switch into Kyogre or whatever partner you need in order to just dish out as much offensive or much damage as possible, because you do want to utilize your turns of Trick Room wisely, as Power Lens Kyogre doesn't exactly boost its power of its water type moves, so you do miss quite a bit of damage. So you need to really utilize all those turns effectively, especially with the lack of damage output of no Mystic Water or Choice Specs on the Kyogre. You do have Terra Water though to make up for the damage output though. And yeah, that's all the top 8 teams. Then we just see like some stuff. Unfortunately, we don't have like all the information about the teams in general, but yeah, we see like Cresselia that was able to get 9th place. I think this team is actually out there. I think it's the same like Thunder Wave Lunar Blessing set, if I'm not mistaken. I think I've seen the 13th place team as well with the Overquill. I think this was a team we faced on Stadium Ladder, which involves Leesy's Kali Ice paired with the T-Spike Intimidate Overquill instead of like a Swiftswim user you would think on Kyogre. And yeah, then we see like some compositions. I mean, I don't think like any of these teams, like we can't tell because we don't have the team sheets. We used the Destiny Bond Driplim team that was able to get top 32 with the Covert Cloak Chien-Pao, I think it was. Or maybe this was Sash. I might be mixing up teams. But I know it was Quick Claw, Ditto, and Destiny Bond Driplim on this build that was able to get top 32. And then yeah, there's just like probably a bunch of teams that they're probably posts about, but I can't really say any judgment really here because the sets again in a close team sheet setting could be very, very different. So yeah, that was Japan Nats. And again, it's actually kind of interesting because the top performing teams of this event were the teams, of course, I mean, at the end of the day, close team sheet techs will be really strong in the best of 1 setting, but in the best of 3 open team sheet, it's going to be weaker. Stuff like the Power Lens Kyogre, stuff like the Bruxish, but they're really able to do well, at least in the early parts of the tournament. But then we see like the consistent teams, and I think it's just really incredible again how Yuma and Shohei especially were just able to do well with like well-known teams and just pilot them to consistency, which we don't see as much in Japan Nats. Usually we see some kind of innovation, but across the board, like it's just like straight up like teams before. I mean, Decorate Smeargle and Calyx Shower Zamazenta, I guess is like different. Normally we saw Decorate Smeargle with other builds like Cali Ice, and then Shohei just using one of the best teams in the format generally. So it's just interesting to see the direction that Japan Nets went this year with like the teams that were well known already just able to perform the best here. All right, so the original part of this episode actually got corrupted, at least audio wise. So I'm going to be doing a retake of this portion. Thankfully, it was only the Singapore Master Ball League portion, but we will be doing it once again. So this is technically post James, but yeah, we have the 2025 Singapore Master Ball League. If you don't know, that is their national level event. So basically, it is the third national that did happen, and it had 59 players at the last weekend of June. And we have, I don't know if I want to even try to pronounce the name because I think I'm definitely going to butcher it, but I believe this player is a two-time finalist at the Singapore VGC Championship event. So finally grabbing a win, which congrats to them because it is finally good after finishing multiple second places to finally get a win. I do know that feeling. So it's a pretty standard Calyx Ice Rider Maridon team. This is actually the team that Michael Kelsch did use and bring to the North American International Championship, which did fall a bit short. I think Michael was one win away and lost a win and in against a Gotti on stream. A bit unlucky there, but it did have quite a bit with the Choice Scarf Maridon, which I actually have changed my opinion on Choice Scarf Maridon. Before I thought it was not that great because it's like, okay, Maridon's really fast, so you really need to Choice Scarf and, you know, reduce all that damage output you have with choice specs, because like choice specs could like one shot Pokemon like Shadow Rider, Zacian, and more. But with the choice scarf, I've actually changed my opinion on it after trying out like recreations of Michael's team. So the choice scarf here, because a lot of the time you bring Maridon, you bring Calyx Ice Rider, and then you bring two partners generally. And a lot of the partners that are really good with like Calyx Ice Rider and sometimes with Maridon aren't exactly faster than the Shadow Rider. So you pretty much have to get Trick 'em Up. But if they have like Calyx Shadow Rider next to partners, it becomes a bit weird. So the choice card Maridon makes a lot of sense on just being able to put on more pressure against Shadow Rider teams, as well as just like Tailwind stuff in general. It also makes it more consistent against like, you know, the choice specs Maridon in the mirror usually. So the choice scarf has actually been something I've been coming around to, more accustomed to at least, on at least the Calyx Ice Rider build. I'm not a huge fan of choice scarf Maridon other than the Cali Ice build so far, but I have been noting on like why it's been doing well. It's just because it's able to put on pressure against the Shadow Rider, and it doesn't really give you opportunities for like, if you do get like faked out on the Maridon, which is like the immediate offensive pressure against like a Terra Shadow Rider that has defensive capabilities, then you would go down to the Life Orb +2 Astral Barrage in most cases, unless they have screens up. This Choice Scarf Maridon allows you kind of circumvent that play, so it's pretty interesting there. You have that Snarl, of course, that's able to help out against the Shadow Rider Redirection, against Lunala and a few others, sacrificing the Dazzling Gleam, but you run the Terra Electric to make up for the lack of damage output you have with that Choice Specs normally. You have a pretty standard Amoonguss, which normally we don't see Amoonguss plus Maridon, but I think the way I've watched like a few streams from Michael and how he's played with the Amoonguss, it's just a very impressive mon, because if you're trying to set up like Rillaboom, which is one of the best Pokemon to counter the Maridon, you can go with the Amoonguss and then threaten Spores on the massive threats. Also, like the team in general doesn't have the best Zamazenta switches without the Amoonguss, so being able to actually switch into Zamazenta Body Press, being able to put on pressure against Spore, especially the Rillaboom Zamazenta cores, I think is actually like a pretty big deal. And of course, Amoonguss, Incineroar, and Calyx Ice Rider can just function on their own as a really good just balanced core. And then you have like the offensive capabilities of the Focus Sash or Shifu. Like Michael did mention that like his 6 were just basically Pokemon that are pretty oppressive, right? Because like Choice Scarf Maridon threatens so much damage, the Calyx Ice Rider can get Trick 'em Up, and Glacial Lances are pretty powerful. Incineroar has, you know, great utility, but also like can dish out a good amount of damage with its great coverage with Flare Blitz and Knockoff and U-Turn. Landorus Incarnate able to dish out a good amount of damage to Pokemon like Zamazenta, opposing Maridon, a fairy types. It's just able to put in a good amount of work. Amoonguss, even though offensively it's not really that oppressive, the Spore threat is always something, and a lot of players are disrespecting the Spore threat because of the fact that Maridon is one of the most common. But if you are facing non-Maridon teams, they usually have a Rillaboom to help counter or slow down the opposing Maridon, so having an Amoonguss plus Miraidon core, I've actually been enjoying more often after utilizing this team a bit and seeing how it's actually functioned. And then of course Urshifu, I don't think we need to say much about it. So that was the 6 that was able to win the Master Ball League. Then in second place, we should know how familiar this team is. It's the Zacian Kyogre team with the Roaring Moon Booster Energy, the Amoonguss, Sashi and Pow, and of course the Urshifu. This is the team that Kian Campbell's been using, especially the most well known for the Zacian Kyogre. That's just able to put on a lot of pressure. I believe that Kian actually did help the player and coach him a bit for this event, so congrats. And yeah, it's just a pretty standard rain team that we've seen otherwise. Third place, taking the team that Nick Navarre used to top cut the North American International Championship, featuring the Kali Ice Kyogre combination, offensive Basket Legion, and then tailwind pressure from the Yvesangelist, while having a bit of a slower mode with Iron Hands and Amoonguss that's able to pivot around. Fourth place, I believe this was the team that Andrew Ding did use to get I believe it was just a 9-3 at North American Internets with the Annihilate. Benji's been using something similar. It has that Covert Cloak, a Dark Urshifu that's able to put on a lot of pressure across the board. And of course, that Choice Scarf Annihilate is super threatening. I think I just don't remember if there was Ogerpon, but yeah, there is an Ogerpon. Fifth and sixth place are going to represent the Calyx Shadow Koraidon builds with the Wheezing, just a few different modes. One of them, the fifth place one, is opting for the Dondozo Tatsugiri mode, you know, just for the mind games in general. And then the sixth place is running the more conventional Sun route with the Brute Bonnet and the Raging Bolt that's able to take advantage of the Sun that the Koraidon does set up. Seventh place is going to feature pretty standard Calyx Ice Rider Miraidon Balance Core, featuring the Urshifu and the Iron Treads, actually, which is going to be just to help out against the opposing the opposing Miraidons, running Dark Urshifu instead of the Water Urshifu. It kind of reminds me of the team that got second place by Dylan from the UIC. I mean, it's pretty much similar, right? You have Miraidon, Incineroar, Urshifu, Iron Treads, running Amoonguss again, and then Calyx Ice Rider as the new additions. And you kind of have a similar idea with the balance. We've seen Calyx Ice Rider, Incineroar, Amoonguss, Urshifu do pretty strong work, especially like it was able to get top 16 at the North American International Championship. And I think the only thing that was like interchangeable was the Iron Treads, bring the Iron Treads to opt for a better matchup into the Kali Ice Miraidon mirror. Then like that is pretty much it with the Koraidon and the Lunala Hard Trick Room team, or not Hard Trick Room team, but the Sun team that has been doing pretty well, was able to get top 8 at this event. And we saw Polar Bear Giovanni able to go for a top cut at the North American International Championship, and I'm pretty sure it features the same sets with the Life Orb Koraidon, the Power Herb Trick Room, Terra Water Lunala, the Scarf Chiyu, the Focus Sash Fluttermane, the Guts Ursaluna, and the Citrus Berry Brute Bonnet. So it's the same teams, pretty much what we've seen from North America. And then like otherwise, there's like one other really interesting build, I suppose, which was 13th place, featuring the Haunter, which is funny. So it's a Kali Ice Zamazenta core, which is really interesting because they're both weak to fire and we don't really see the composition too much. But yeah, it does feature like a Wellspring Ogerpon to help out in the Kyogre matchup for redirection. The Incineroar with Temper Flare instead of the Flare Blitz, since you don't want to take the recoil, I suppose. The Blood Moon Ursaluna, that can be a pretty dominant sweeper if you can set up properly. And then the Haunter, and this Haunter set is crazy. That's Focus Sash, so it's able to live any one hit. And its moveset is Trick Room, Haze, Foul Play, and Taunt. Now, if you wanted a pretty similar set, I think you could actually run technically one Mon, and that would be Hypno. And I think Hypno gets a pretty similar toolkit, if I'm not mistaken. I know it gets Trick Room, Haze, and I believe it does get Foul Play. It also gets Inner Focus, and it technically is bulkier than Haunter. But just opting for the Haunter instead, it gets the Levitate, which of course can help out. The team doesn't have a ground resist other than the Ogerpon Wellspring. And you know what? It's a Haunter. You might not expect it. But yeah, it has normal Terra for Calyx Shadow Rider and the Lunala, Moongeist Beam, and Astral Barrages. But yeah, it's just funny to see Haunter. But pretty much, I think this national did kind of just showcase a lot of teams that we would expect. Like pretty much this top 16, all the teams we've pretty much seen in tournament, other than I guess the Haunter one. I think the Haunter one is the more unique one, but otherwise all the builds we have seen them for: the Koraidon, Calyx Shadow Rider, the Miraidon, plus the Calyx Ice Riders, and the Kyogre builds. All of them have pretty much been something that we have seen before in the past. And yeah, not really, I think, anything too different from this national championship. All right, before we get into the 2026 circuit details, I'm going to go over a little bit because I did talk about my predictions in the last Baekfast Club. Let's see what I got right and let's see what I got wrong. So, the common restricted duo that I thought was going to be able to win NAIC did not win NAIC, which was the Koraidon and Calyx Shadow Rider. I didn't think the Wheezing variants were good, or like they had a ceiling. That's basically what I thought. Like I thought the ceiling was like made sense, and I believe the highest one was like top 64, which was James Evans, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, because like the only ones that you saw which were Wheezing Koraidon was like the top six or the top 64, if I'm not mistaken. Which yeah, James Evans was able to get top 32 with the Wheezing team. But yeah, I did think that team did have a bit of a ceiling just because like you pretty much have enough time to have figured out that matchup by now. The Wheezing teams have been so common, I think, that it just made sense that it was going to have to take a new direction if Koraidon Calyx Shadow was going to do well. The one that ended up making it the furthest, which was Gabriela Gotti, did reveal the. I mean, this is kind of a direction I thought, like a more balance oriented with like different ways that you could take advantage of the sun. Now, I would not have expected like a Screamtail to take points with these restricted duo as well as the Wellspring Ogre Pawn. But however, I do think that it could have had a lot of potential. And just in general, I do think Calyx Shadow Rider plus Koraidon is still a really good restricted duo pair, especially. But the ones that ended up making out were just the ones that have been dominating and been, I think, just overall the most consistent, which have already like super strong builds that just haven't been contested yet. Which the winner, which was Federico, did run Lunala Miraidon. It's a core we've seen, and I'm not surprised that it did well because I think Lunala is just a really good Pokemon. I mentioned it before, and Miraidon, like, no surprise, it is one of the strongest Pokemon in the format just because of the ability plus just all the multipliers with the choice specs. It's just absolutely absurd. I mean, there are other variants as well. The top ones were the choice specs variants. I'm not surprised Cali Ice Miraidon was able to do well. I'm not surprised Calyx Ice or Lunala plus Miraidon was able to do well. I'm a little bit surprised that like the build was able to win just in general with like how strong it is. Like I guess it's not too surprising when you think about it because like it's a team that just has a few different modes and has just good consistent mons like Miraidon, Incineroar, Urshifu, Lunala. You can't go wrong. You have the really oppressive Ursaluna where if it's under Trick Room and you don't have a good position against it, it can absolutely just wreck shop. It's also good into the Shadow Rider and opposing Miraidon. And then of course Whimsicott does have access to fast Tailwind mode, Light Screen that can just help support the team, especially Light Screen next to Electricity Lunala. A little bit hard to damage to Lunala, especially with Terastallization. So I guess in the end, it's not too surprising. However, I thought this team could definitely top cut. I definitely thought it could top 8. Did I think it was going to win? That was a little bit different, but congrats to Federico for it. I said that Calyx Shadow almost had potential to win, but I wasn't too confident in the North American player base that was going to bring it. I did kind of disregard forgetting that, like, yeah, the Europeans could definitely bring it. It had a strong showcase at UIC. And yeah, so Marco as well as just Yuma Kinugawa being able to bring Calyx Shadow Zamazenta was able to do really well. Like Marco is a really strong player. I'm not surprised that he was able to go as far as he could. Like he might have even been one of the favorites just to win the tournament in general. He had a very solid, consistent team. So Calyx Shadow Zamazenta, I did mention that it could definitely win because I did think it was just one of the strongest restricted duos because of like how absurd like the combination can work, especially with the wide guard support, the fast offensive pace of Life from Shadow Rider that's able to do a ton of damage. However, yeah, like it was just able to do pretty well because there were 3 of them actually in the top cut. If you count Ruben as well, who was also able to do well with the Focus Sash Encore Shadow Rider Calyx, which was able to perform pretty well. Like I thought this build was not going to be performing as well with the Double Grass Chien Pao plus Raging Bolt. It was able to go 8-0 day 1 by Kyle Livinghouse as well, but unfortunately Kyle did fall short. I think finished 9-3. So I was a little bit shocked to see the build do well and place as far as top 8, but Ruben, a good enough player who was late coming off a second place at the Bologna special event, was able to pull it off. So a more Calyx Shadow Rider Zamazenta representation than I thought would have been, but I do think it does make sense that it is able to do well just because I think the duo is incredible and the players that brought it do understand the duo extremely well. And like, what else did I mention? I did mention that Smeargle I thought had pretty good potential as a support mon. I still stand by, like, there are some support mons that are just generally good. With the Smeargle able to do well with Decorate, I've been testing Decorate a lot with Smeargle, and I'm happy to see that I was able to do well outside of just like the standard Calyx Ice Rider stuff. And the Decorate Smeargle has been able to put in work. I didn't think this would be the duo that it would be paired up well though with. Calyx Shadow Rider plus Zamazenta is not what I expected. And there were also like several Smeargles in day 2 as well, if you look at it, because if there were like this Terapagos Choice Specs team that was able to do extremely well. Now I wish I could find where Smeargle is on this list. I know there's Smeargle somewhere. I know there were several Smeargles in day 2. I just don't remember how many. Can't really find it on this list, huh? Oh, here we go. 19 Smeargles out of 162. That's actually a pretty good conversion rate. That's a pretty good conversion rate. All of them also were Focus Sash. There were like 3, I think, with the Kali Ice stuff on Hard Trick Room, because Technician and Own Temple really only run that. Mostly paired with Shadow Rider and Ice Rider. Terapagos, there were 6 of them. And there were actually like quite a few Zamazentas. I mean, Torviv also got day 2 with the Smeargle, but it wasn't decorated. It was just support Smeargle with, I think it was Fake Out, Follow Me, Spore, and Wide Guard, which also does make sense. So I felt like Smeargle was a good call to this event. I think people are realizing how silly Smeargle can be just in a double restricted format, because of the way it can just partner up with the restricted Pokemon and enable them to sweep, because there's so many mind games you have to get right there. Yeah. And then what else was there? Was there anything else that I really needed to talk about? Like Lunala I thought was going to be good. I don't remember if I said Terapagos would maybe, like, I said I think there was one that could potentially top cut, and that was Francesco. And yeah, Francesco was able to pull out extremely well, getting another top 8 with this team, making an adjustment with Urshifu. But if there's any player that could do well with Terapagos, it was pretty much going to be him. He's been very consistent with this mon, and just pilots it differently than like other players. He really has a true understanding of Terapagos and how to position it. So not too surprising. And then like, what else was there? I mean, across the board, like this, or the top 22, like I would say there's not like anything super crazy that there wasn't to be an expectation of, I think, for it. Like all of these duos we have pretty much seen. The Lunala Koraidon, the Zamazenta Miraidon, the, like, all of these restricted just make a lot of sense to me. I think across the board, yeah, not really too much surprises. Maybe like a few of the partners like pair up with, like the Sneaslers, like there are 2 Sneaslers in the top cut as well, but it was the same team basically from the same group. But yeah, I mean, like all of these Pokemon, all of these teams, I think definitely makes sense across the board in like how well it would do at NIC. Also, I do apologize because I didn't realize that my Flux app did turn on again. So I think it was only for like the last 10 minutes or so that it really just showed red. But yeah, luckily it wasn't too big of a deal because it was just like small recaps. But for anyone who did think the color did change of the video, yeah, it did. But yeah, that's what I thought at NIC. And then I think Japan Nats, there was definitely some things I kind of expected and kind of didn't expect. Like, for instance, I knew that there was going to be some stuff. I didn't actually expect like a Terapagos to do as well as it did, but I think I did mention there was a potential of one Terapagos that might have also been able to do well Japan Nats. And it wasn't the Calm Mindset. Like, I think the Calm Mind one's harder to run for sure. And the Meteor Beam, I think 3 attacks definitely just makes sense in order to do well, because you have that Meteor Beam special attack boost, and then it's just putting on immediate offensive pressure. And Meteor Beam is just really strong in a Pokemon like Kali Ice, and like just KOing an instant or like other Pokemon is just really good. As I said, Smeargle I think is like really good as a best of 1 Pokemon, or best of 1 close team sheet mon especially. But like, I mean, it's just good in general, right? Like, it's a good Pokemon, but I think it shines especially in close team sheet. And yeah, like the fact that it was able to do well Japan Nats, there were 3 Smeargles that were in the top 8. That one is not too surprising to me. I think what was surprising me, like Groudon being able to get into the top 8 and sneak in. I thought like the Calyx Shatter, I mean, this Bruxish team, like I knew there was going to be some things with Kyogre that players were going to do, but the weakness policy, a Jolly Calyx Shadow Rider, I don't think I would have guessed that. But you know what, like, am I surprised? No. Am I surprised? There's always going to be something. The Power Anklet or Power Lens Kyogre with the Eject Pack Smeargle and the Cali Ice set. Like, and I thought what was shocking was like the finals team, like Yuma, Kinugawa, and Shohei Kimura, they're really strong players. Like, it's no surprise that they made finals. But the fact that their teams, I think it's just so impressive again, how they were able to do really well with these teams that, I mean, people just already knew. Like, maybe they're, again, guessing games. I'm like, okay, did they change the sets on these teams? And, you know, there probably was. Like, for instance, the Water. The Terra Water definitely could have come into play. I normally expect the Terra Ghost, but the Terra Water does make a difference. Alongside, like, there were so many changes that they could have made, Yuma made on the Smeargle, especially. Like, there could have been definitely a bunch of changes. However, even in a close team sheet environment, it's just such a solid team, and he just ended up knowing like how to position it well enough to just be able to win the entire event. I think it's just super impressive. And of course, you do have so many mind games with Smeargle that you have to get them right, even if you know the sets anyway. Like, but the fact that you're able to win is just super impressive. Like, the fact that it is these teams both work anyway in the best of 3 setting, especially, like, you know, there are some teams that more rely on best of 1, which did fall through in the open team sheet top cut. For instance, the Bruxics team with the weakness policy Calyx Shadow. Once you kind of know the strategy, it's like a lot easier to prepare for. And the Terapagos team as well. And I think the Powerlands Kyogre definitely does suffer, especially. But then you see like teams that like were just able to be generally good, not surprising, like the Calyx Shadow Rider, Zacian Core. Like, I think these 5 in general, before the Calyx or after the Calyx Shadow Rider, like, this is something I've used in Reg G before, as I mentioned. It's just a good consistency because you have the Tailwind mode, you have really good offense using the Lando Eye, you have strong damage output across the board, and then the Encore disabled Calyx Shadow Rider can just play quite a bit, especially interlocking or preventing your opponent from going for favorable moves with a choice lock. So it can definitely be a really strong, just, I guess, anti kind of cheese factors. But across the board, like, this team I thought definitely doing well. Yeah. Otherwise, we don't really see the duo, but I think the team composition just makes so much sense. And then Haruki running the Cali Ice Smeargle. We have, again, tried out the team before. It's just solid because you have the Decorate Glacial Lance factors. So, and I'm not surprised that Kyogre is able to do well. As I said before, there's so many Kyogre ways you can run Kyogre. I bet a lot of players, when they played into this team, just expected the Smeargle Farigiraf with like a Choice Specs Kyogre to blow up teams in Cali Ice Trick Room. But no, this was just a Solvest Cali Ice, Smeargle lead, Decorate, fake out all the supports, then clean up with the Choice Scarf Kyogre. Like, Kyogre getting 3rd place is just like, that's not surprising. So I think it was just, again, I was surprised because I said Shadow Rider Zamazenta was going to probably do worse at Japan Nets because there's so many ways to cheese Shadow Rider Zamazenta. But I think it just makes it even more impressive that Yuma was, again, able to win. And then, like, Miraidon Lunala, like, the fact that this build was able to win is still really impressive. But I think these have a bit more guessing games because you could definitely change the Lunala and Miraidon sets a lot easier than I think on this team with the Shadow Rider Zamazenta, because there's only like so many moves like Zamazenta is going to run, and that Shadow Rider like would actually run, I think, on this kind of build. But yeah, so I think we got some right, we got some wrong. There was definitely some surprises, but across the board, am I super shocked about the results? Not really. I think these are just good, consistent players for the most part. We got some really cool techs out of them, which is to be expected out of Japan Nats. And yeah, like, this is what the calls were. Now let's go into the 2026 circuit details because we have got the juicy stuff. They have announced basically a few rule changes coming up, including some of the regional locations, and it should be super exciting. So one thing I do want to note is the Switch 2 is now legal at tournaments. They are allowing it for the World Championship, which, I'm going to be honest, I don't know if this is a good idea. We'll see how it goes. But they are going to be allowed for future tournaments. So I'm assuming that they tested the connection and it's probably all right. I'm a little hesitant though, because let's just say the Scarlet and Violet era of VGC hasn't been great with connection issues, and I don't know how the stands are going to work. I don't know how the communication is going to go between the Switch 1 and the Switch 2. And yeah, I am just like, if there are a bunch of DC problems, I'm just going to be very, very concerned about, because I do not want flashbacks to 23 Worlds at all. Luckily, I wasn't in a position with like the DCs, but I played so many tournaments that I've had DC errors before or disconnections, and it is just one of the most frustrating games that it makes it hard to actually take the game seriously. So I hope that the setup is solid, and I hope that there aren't too many disconnects, but I have a feeling this world could have a lot of that potential, but we'll see. I'm hoping that it's solid, but I am not holding my breath. So there is that. And yeah, we do have confirmation that they are allowing the Switch 2 for the World Championship and future events starting up. If you don't know, league challenges for TCG are going to be going up. Doesn't matter. VGC events, I don't think they're allowed to host any like mid-season showdowns or premier challenge, or like I guess cups and challenges, I guess they call them for VGC. I like that's how much I haven't really paid attention to it. But yeah, they I think are not starting it for VGC. It's only TCG, and they're making an adjustment for Swiss rounds for both VGC and TCG, which is the important part. So in VGC, we've had the structure where it's kind of been like Swiss rounds. It's going to stay the same, but the number of Swiss rounds will be changing. They're going to be adding an extra round of Swiss to tournaments in general. So based on how many players do attend an event, it's going to be determining the number of Swiss rounds. And if we take every tournament that we have played so far, it's just, or this season, we're just going to be adding an extra Swiss round. And in order to make up for it, they're also going to be reducing the top cut number from maximum of like, I think it was 32 or like all X2s cut down to just the top 16, which does kind of stink in some cases, but at the same time, I think it's kind of fine. An extra Swiss round kind of makes it easier for like prizing, because let me just say, like, for instance, at EIC, like there were 9 threes that were in top 32 and were able to make $2,000 for it's like a top 128. I think I don't think it was top 256 if I'm not mistaken, but top 128 just got like one box. And yeah, I was one of like those extras, and I've had those experiences where like UIC like 24, for instance, I ended up finishing 11-4, but I was unfortunately one of the few X4s then that ended up missing out on getting any prize money, because I think I was like 36 or 37 or something like that. So yeah, like the disparities between the two are pretty massive, and I think having an extra Swiss round just helps with the prizing for those players who don't get in the top cut. And also, like, even for top cut, based on the numbers I believe currently, like, I don't think this should be affecting like the top cut numbers at all for like the extra Swiss round, because imagine it's just like playing the round 32 into the top 16, and pretty much you're just playing as a form of Swiss basically, because at this point I believe that the numbers don't really change too much after accounting for the Swiss round, where you would actually have a player that bubbles at top 16 because they cap it at top 16 now. So I don't think it's that big of a deal unless the game really grows, I think, and we have people bubble out of this top 16, which honestly bubbling does suck. But I think overall, like, I'm kind of surprised they don't just have it at X2 still, because I'm pretty sure there is like, it's the same as the AFC because it's asymmetric cut. Maybe there would be too many X2s. I don't know. I'm pretty sure, based on the number wise though, I'm like pretty confident that we aren't going to have anyone bubble. At least if we use the numbers from this season, I'm like pretty sure it's like it was impossible to bubble for a top 16. I'm pretty sure, because I'm pretty sure the max number of top cut players was like 27, and I'm pretty sure like it would be like what 15 players max for like a extra Swiss round, and if you count the extra like numbers of like the undefeateds and the X1s to have a cut, I guess he would have more X2s, but I'm like pretty sure it's like really unlikely based on the numbers. It's going to affect TCG probably for sure, but I don't think for VGC it will. But of course, I could be completely wrong on this. I wouldn't be surprised if I am, but I guess we'll just have to try out a year and see how it goes at this point. But I kind of like the extra idea of the extra Swiss round, because at this point, like, I think having an extra Swiss round just helps with, again, that prize pool range of like the barely making into the like whatever, like missing out on the top cut number, like the top 32 range, and like finishing like places 27 to 32. Then like all the disparities between 160 to top 128, I think it'll just help those numbers for a more consistent number. And yeah, that is a big one. the other big news for VGC is going to be the championship points, because they're adjusting the numbers for the global challenges and the grand challenges. So how it used to work in the past is the entire TPCI region, any region that can earn championship points, would basically be all accounted into one championship point table. So let's say you got a first place was a European, and a second place person was from North America, and the third place, let's say, is from Oceania. So according to that, first the European player would get the first place amount of championship points. The American would, or the North American would get the second amount of championship points it could get from the global challenge, and then the third place would get third place. But now under these new rules, they're separating based on the regions. So they would all actually get first place championship points and be changing the table. So I don't really like this change, I think, because it inflates the championship point number quite dramatically, I'm pretty sure, for like each region. So I'm not sure how much I actually like this change. I would say I probably don't like this change overall, just because I think inflating those numbers does make a big difference. And yeah, I mean, they did change some kickers for like the league challenge, which I actually think is kind of nice, because it'd be easier to miss CP based on the numbers earlier, like based on tournament numbers, because it was harder to get like the amount of people to show up. So they've changed the numbers. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good change, and more championship points between 9th through 64th place at championship events. I actually like this change a lot, because for some reason in the regional, I mean, for like any of the big events, especially regionals and the internationals, one of the problems was there was a huge change between top 8 and top 16. Like the number was very dramatic. Like how I qualified for this invite without any local points was because I got top 8 at one of the regionals, which I think was like 130 extra points for a regional, and that's a lot of points. It's either 130 or 80, I can't remember the exact number, but it's a big difference number. So the fact that it was just that much between getting top 8 and top 16 for winning one extra round, I thought was kind of absurd. So I'm actually really liking this change, because I don't think it should be that much of a difference between the top 8 and the top 16 based on like the number of championship points. It probably should scale like a bit, but like across the board, it shouldn't be that much of a difference. And because like the difference between something like top 16 and top 32 was like maybe like 30 or 40. It was like not that much. Like the numbers between like top 32 to top 64 to top 128, like those numbers are very small compared to like that big jump for some reason from top 8 and top 16. So never understood it, but I'm really glad that is going to be a change. So those are the main parts about VGC. I guess there's the Ace Trainer reward system. I mean, I guess if you get 200 championship points for competing in VGC events, you will get like, I think it's like a promo card. I don't really know about this because I don't really pay attention to these. So yeah, otherwise we do have the locations for all the regionals and the internationals. So this is kind of the big one here, and yeah, should be exciting. So I will be talking about the new locations. We have some of the regionals in North America. I think we have some of them in Europe, some of them special events, and then we have all the international dates far in advance, which is amazing, because let me just say, sometimes releasing these dates so like close to the event is just such a bad look. Like people need to get time off for these events, and the fact that we can't get the dates early enough and factors, I mean, there's still like registration stuff, so like you'll be fighting for registration and hope you get in, but like a much welcome change just to announce like events in like as early as possible, because players got to get like, you know, time off and actually like schedule these events. You know, this economy, we're going to probably get still pretty expensive like hotels and airplanes. So like the flights are just like in general, like price of traveling is so expensive that we would like them in advance so we can hopefully grab them at a cheaper price. So very happy that like more events have been announced, especially the internationals, which is going to be the big one. And of course Worlds was announced before, which is San Francisco. I don't think the date is for Worlds yet is actually released officially yet, but like having most of the majors is like pretty big. So we have Worlds coming up, but that is in the 2025 season. We already know about this one. And the first event will be 2026. Again, we don't actually know like if we're what format we're playing. We don't know if potentially to shadow drop Pokemon champions, for instance, because we'll see if they hype it up and like Mega Evolution is going to be a thing because they've been promoting like the Mega Evolution stuff. So maybe, but I kind of doubt it. Like I really doubt it. It would be cool, but I just don't see it. But however, we have Frankfurt Regionals going to be from September 13th to 14th for EU. Then the Monterey, that is a Latum, 13th to 14th in September. Then we have Pittsburgh coming back, which came back from the 24 season. I actually like that venue. I don't know if I'll be at this Pittsburgh. I think it just depends on how I feel about Worlds. Because if you don't know, for those of you who don't follow me that often about like what I do for like Pokemon, like I have been on this break kind of period, and I've just been really toning down the traveling. Really helps out because this economy. But the fact that I am just kind of chilling for the most part, I don't know if I'll be at Pittsburgh. It is technically my closest regional, but I don't know if I'll be at this one. I think it just depends on how I feel after Worlds, because usually traveling a lot, like it's a 1 month after. But yeah, I'm not too sure. I'll see how it goes, but Pittsburgh might be a maybe if I do attend. That's going to be in September. October is going to be Milwaukee, which is kind of interesting because Milwaukee's usually in the I thought it I was going to say fall, but it is in the fall this time. It's usually in the spring. It's actually moving to October, which is interesting because Milwaukee was technically a few regionals ago, so they're having it again. And then we have like, which I don't think I'm probably going to Milwaukee. We got I have no idea where this is. Brazil in October. Then we have France in October as well for EU. Poland again. This is another regional location, like in November. And then the really exciting one, which is I think the one that's been talking about, and I never thought I would see this, Las Vegas Pokemon Regional Championship in November 14th to 16th. I never thought that we would have a Vegas regional because we have juniors and seniors, so they usually don't host them in like these kinds of cities. I mean, there technically was Atlantic City. We had a regional championship back in Atlantic City, New Jersey in like 2019 before the pandemic, but I did not think we would ever get a Vegas regional. So that's actually really exciting. There is a chance that I would go to this one just because I've never actually been to Las Vegas. I've never been to Las Vegas. So it sounds like a cool time. Like, you know, going to a regional championship, like that's what I like about Pokemon, like traveling to places that I really like to explore. That's why I like going to Vancouver, and I like going to other regionals that are like in cool locations. And Vegas is just a city I've never been to, so that might be one I definitely would like to check out. So there is a chance. I'm not going to confirm this, but it is one that definitely catches my interest out of like anything on the list. Then we have Argentina in November as well. Then LAIC, which is actually going to be the weekend after Las Vegas. I usually go to LAIC usually, but unless they shadow drop champions, I think it's really unlikely I go to LAIC this time around, just because I used to think it was an 8-hour flight. It's like 13-hour flight from like New York. It is pretty far, and I'm getting old. I think I am getting old where I'm like not really good with like long flights unless like I'm in business class flight, because it's really hard for me to sleep on planes. So I don't know if I'd go to LIC. I think if you do have the opportunity and you are on the fence of going to LIC, I think you should. I think it's a really cool environment. Like LIC is just really fun for pretty much anyone who is like North American, European. Like the fact that it's pretty easy or pretty accessible to get to everywhere because of the prices. Like the only thing that's really expensive is the flights, but otherwise like everything else is pretty easy access to price wise. So I think LIC is definitely one of my favorite regionals, or not regionals. It's definitely like a favorite location in Internet. I do love LIC. Of course, I've gotten first and second place at LIC before, as a dear to my heart. I just don't know if I really, again, since I am on a break period, technically, I do think I do plan on probably going to less events just in general in 2026, just because if it is still Scarlet Violet, especially, like I think I'm kind of just tired out at this point playing Gen 9 terrestrialization. So we'll see. Maybe if the format's like really fun, maybe if champions drops, or maybe if I find some insane deal, it's a no-brainer go to LIC, maybe. Right now, I think I'm going to be pretty good here, but I would probably still, again, especially if I would go to Las Vegas, especially because Las Vegas is like way easier for me to access. Obviously, I also don't like playing tournaments back-to-back weekends because it's very draining, especially travel-wise, and then having to play another event afterwards. So that would be another reason why I'd probably am leaning towards no, but it's a possibility. Then we have like Germany in late November. We have Mexico again in January, as well as the UK and the Netherlands, or New Zealand, not Netherlands. I have something blocking the view of my monitor. We have Chile in February, UIC. I'm on the fence on this one. I always love going to UIC because I love competing at UIC, and it's the only international that I haven't exactly have top cut. It's the only international that I have in top cut, because LIC I have one, OCIC I've gotten top 8 before, NAIC I've gotten top 8 before. UIC is the only one, and if I get this one, I would get the try, or I would have top cut every single international. I think I'd be the second or third player. I'm pretty sure it'd be the third player who's ever done that before. I think the only two have been, I believe, or maybe it'd be the fourth player. I don't remember. I think the three that I'm thinking of would be Gabriel Agati, Melvin Ke, and Marco Fierro. I'm pretty sure those are the only, I think those are the only players that have top cut all internationals, if I'm not mistaken. I believe at least two of them have top cut. I know there's at least two. I think there might be three though. It would be those three though. So yeah, EIC, I always have a fun time. I don't know why people dislike London. I do think the convention center area though, that they use for London, the Excel Center, like the center itself is fine. Like, I enjoyed the worlds there. I've enjoyed like the big space, but the area around the center, like the food, the location, it's pretty awful. It's pretty awful. You got to take a train down for like 20-30 minutes to have any cool parts of London. So I actually do like London. So possibility there. Again, I might be hungry for that top cut. Maybe we'll switch to an interesting format. That might be a possibility, but I haven't decided. Then we got Spain special event in March. We have Mexico in April, Utrecht in May, and Peru in May as well. And then North America Internats, which I still haven't been to yet because I skipped 25 because I just didn't feel like going, since I pretty much had my Worlds Invite almost auto locked up, and then also the fact that last NIC, which was the first New Orleans, was during a wedding, so I didn't go there. And not my wedding, but a family's wedding, so I did attend that wedding instead of North America. I do not regret it, but yeah, we are missing like a bunch of regional locations for North America. We have pretty much all of Europe and the EU ones, I think, and I think we probably have all the LATAM ones, most of them. I think the events that we're just missing are going to be Australia and the US ones, but they usually announce those later down the line. I hope they don't announce them too late, because we've gotten some pretty late regional announcements, I think, in the past year or two. So would like them to be announced soon so I could plan my trip. I am hoping Vancouver is going to be one again, because I would definitely go to Vancouver again, because I like seeing my friends on the West Coast there. It's like the only West Coast region I really would like going to, other than, again, if I do attend, Vegas would probably be the consideration. But yeah, otherwise I just don't really plan on playing too much, I think, for the upcoming season, unless, again, maybe like we get Shadow dropped Pokemon Champions, which that'll be an episode by itself, and I'll have to really think about it. But currently in this economy, I am chilling. So that is basically all the announcements for the VGC VGC 2026 season. We went over North American. Oh yeah, there's actually technically one thing. We did technically get an announcement for what's it called, for like the APAC region, which is the Asian Pacific region, which is outside of Korea and Japan. It's basically all of the other countries like Singapore and all those like places that had like the Master Ball League. I don't think they technically made an official announcement, if I'm not mistaken. No, I don't think they have. But one thing that did change is going to be the fact that they had like the Master Ball League, which was going to be their regional championship level, and then I think they had like or their national level, and then they had like these small regional qualifiers where you could get buys and stuff. I think they said they are going to be getting rid of those in-person places for the regional location and moving it to online instead, which is kind of a step backwards because that was their system 23. 24 they had in-person events, and now Master Ball League is still going to be in person, but like the other tournaments are going to be online, which is kind of a step back realistically. I'm not sure, of course, about the logistics of everything, and I don't think it's TPCI doesn't have control of that, so it's just a shame, but that is going to be the situation, I believe. So okay, yeah, I'm not showing it on screen at the moment, but new season involves Premier Ball Leagues, which is what they recall being removed from the VGC circuit, and qualifiers for Japan Nats are going to be online, which it kind of stinks. That really does stink for that really does stink for APAC, because I think like in-person events are just so different from online. I wouldn't be surprised if one day VGC got so big where we kind of had to do something online in order to cut down the numbers for logistics, but even then, like I don't know. Like I feel like everyone should experience like in-person tournaments because it is a really different feeling from like playing at home online. However, that is going to be it for this episode of the Baekfast Club. The next episode will probably be after the Pokemon Presents Day, which I guess I'll talk about anything interesting there if VGC happens, if they shall drop champions as well. Like you'll hear a lot from me, but otherwise then we'll have the Pokemon Presents series. I think I'll catch up on some of the online tours, and then afterward I guess it would be the pre-show before Worlds, and yeah, then we'll just be continuing on. So if you have enjoyed the episode of this Baekfast Club, please leave a like down below, leave a comment down below, let me know what you feel about the series. It was a longer episode than I thought. I did not think I was going to go this long. I am shocked that I went for this long, and we only covered like 3 events. We covered 3 events and it went on for 2 hours. This is like but yeah, it's probably longer than 2 hours after I cut down some of the stuff from the mess ups that I had. So yeah, that's gonna be it. Again, let me know what your thoughts are down below in the comments. If you have any, please let me know what you think about the series. And yes, next time we'll be talking about the Pokemon Presents Day that is going to be happening later this year in July. But I'll catch you later.